Thank you very much for attending. We will dive into our June 25th, 2025 Heber Light and Power Board Meeting. The time is now 4:03 p.m. and I want to welcome board members and staff that are here in attendance. As a board member, we have Kevin Payne, Kendall Crittenden, myself, Heidi Franco, and Mayor Brenda Christensen. Aaron Cheatwood says that he will join us soon, as well as Sid Ostergaard, but they're out of the room at this point. So everyone, the first item on our agenda today is the consent agenda. May 28th of 2025 board meeting minutes, our special meeting on June 6, 2025, those minutes, plus the May 2025 financial statement and warrants. Board, is there any questions, comments, or motions on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, there was one thing that I wanted to ask about, and I'm not sure who to ask other than Adam. Adam, on the special meeting minutes, we made a motion for the property sale.
Oh,
It looks like the final price can be different than that motion.
yeah.
So how should we go in and change what was approved before from the June 6th meeting?
Didn't we give some parameters in that?
Yes, but it's exceeded that parameter.
It didn't exist.
It didn't,
I
it's
think-
within the,
3.2.
I thought it says in the minutes 3.
Oh, it was 3. That's an error in the minutes.
Okay, so then Brenda.
So we
need
allowed
to-
up to
I
3
need
too,
to-
right?
That's
what I recall.
We need to correct the special minutes to read 3.2.
Right, not to exceed the 3.2. Sid is trying to get into the meeting. He says.
Second stands.
Thank you. Okay.
With
so
that correction.
Brady, are you good on that motion? For the June 6th special meeting minutes to change that, it says 3 million,
Million.
but not to exceed the 3.2 million, because that's what we recall. You can certainly check it on the recording too and let us know if there's any other issues.
That was my recollection as well.
Yeah.
I knew we
Mine
gave
too,
some
it was
parameters.
3.2 that we said we didn't want to go over, so.
Okay.
Okay.
All
You can let
right.
him know, you can reach out to me if he isn't able, I don't see him anywhere still,
Okay.
but he does have a link.
All right, I'm sorry. I wish I
Okay.
could multitask that well, but I cannot. So we're going to take the vote, please, on this, and Kevin, we'll start with you, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 4-0. And Cliff is here for his state ombudsman report. But Cliff, we're just gonna beg your indulgence because of visitors that we also have that have a busy schedule, unless you have a busy schedule too.
I don't.
If you don't
Mention
mind.
a couple of comments.
Well, do you mind
Okay,
waiting
okay.
just a touch? Because I do need to meet
Yeah,
move up Riley with the system inspection. Is that all right?
yeah, and I'm actually
You're not
Jordan.
Riley. You're
I'm
Jordan.
yeah.
I
I
thought
was
so.
gonna
That-
say,
That's
he's not
so
Riley.
different right now.
Yeah,
So if we could go to yours and then
for sure.
yours and then yours, if that's okay, please. Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I'm Jordan, I'm the distribution system planner. Riley's unable to make it tonight, so he asked me to step in and share what we're doing with system inspections. And I'm gonna share my screen.
Oh, let me stop share. I just got the agenda.
Okay. Let's see. What do I need to do? Oh, hit share.
Enjoy as a attendee, but it's okay.
Is that good? How come it's not showing?
There.
There we go.
He's on there.
Great. Sid has just joined us, everyone. Thank you, Sid, for joining us.
Okay. Jason asked me to put this slide on here and show the expansion of service territory up there along Highway 32 and Highway 40 with the recent annexations and whatnot. The service territory has expanded almost 500 acres. Anything else you wanted to say about that, Jason?
Yeah, it'll come up in some discussions later on in the agenda. And that's why I wanted Jordan to include this. I just want to remind the board that within these service territory parameters, we have the obligation to serve, meaning there's no other provider. So it is our obligation to serve all the loads within that boundary as per state statute with the 2011 service territory settlement with Pacificor Rocky Mountain Power. So, there's gonna be a lot of growth in those additional 500 plus acres. I just wanted to make that kind of known on the map and let you guys see kind of what that change looks like.
Jason, every time we do that, how some of that is served by Rocky Mountain, what's the exchange there on purchase of infrastructure and that every time that happens?
So when we take over a development that right now, we've just been taking over a development that has a few acres and they're losing those customers anyway. So, we just pick up all the new customers. Where we're gonna run into some purchase type issues is when the annexation initially happened, this little section right here was annexed in, and that's a development. It's a homes development, if you've heard of that. And we bought that infrastructure that Rocky Mountain Power had put in from Rocky Mountain Power at the agreed upon value in the state statute. As we come down 40 down through here, let me see, I gotta get it.
You want me to go to a map? Or-
Yeah, so, it used to be that, our service territory was at Coyote Lane. So there's gonna be a couple of JAGs that could get, it's really the customer's choice, but in the utilities working together, it might make sense that if everything's annexed, but these apartment homes, that, somebody might remind me what those,
The crossings.
Wasatch Commons?
Wasatch Commons,
Wait, those are further down, aren't they?
down
Yeah,
here.
right
there.
there.
Commons
There
right
you go.
here.
So this the crossings that wants to put the hotels in at River Road on the southeast corner.
Harvest Village.
Yeah,
And
but
Harvest Village on the
Harvest Village,
southwest.
yeah, is up here, in
There
this
you go.
general area
Yep.
right here. But yeah, so Wasatch Commons is currently served by Rocky Mountain Power. If everything gets annexed, UVU is another one that's currently served by Rocky Mountain Power. But, Rocky Mountain Power might say, well, I'm not gonna maintain all this line, because all these customers are yours. So, we're gonna expect you to serve them as well. And it's kind of a cherry picking rule that's built into that legislation, that, we just can't come out here and pick new loads with new wire and conductor and everything. And leave them serving, these old places that didn't come into annexation. So we may be required to, if these customers also agree to be served by us, then we would pick up them, and we have to buy that infrastructure at that value that's specified in state statute.
So, quick question, Jason. I thought that our kayak projects included what was on Valley Hills Boulevard and Coyote View Drive in what you're saying is the Rocky Mountain Power area. Have we not done any kayak projects in that area then?
We haven't laid infrastructure in there yet. We have will serve letters, on anything that has been annexed.
So, almost all of that's been annexed, except for just the little part down by, just north of the Commons. Just south of the Commons.
Jordan pulled this map off of the city map, so then the city map
Well-
needs updated, so.
It's, most of that's been annexed, except for, like I say, between the Commons and the Fitzgerald Road. Some of that has not been
Fitzgerald
on the
just fell out.
frontage. Right on the
Right.
frontage. It's
That
the Wong
frontage piece,
property, the
yeah.
Wong Guy property.
Yeah.
And then right to the south of that, but then there's the Fitzgerald Road, and everything around that Fitzgerald Road and up behind it has been annexed. So
Right, and
the
so
Highlands has
Jordan,
been annexed.
and I'm not speaking for Jordan, but Jordan will, he'll include that in our shaded area.
Okay,
As soon as we start putting infrastructure in for those developers.
okay.
But for this, he just pulled it off the city map,
Well, I think that's an outdated map.
so,
Because everything north of UVU, except,
well, it changes every month, so we
Yeah, I
can
know.
see what.
Why it's
You're
not
right.
today.
you're right, there's some of those property owners that I think went with the Riverview Incorporation, so
Mhm.
it goes back and forth
Right,
right in that area,
Yeah.
but that's really just frontage.
Yeah.
It's not that deeper area that you're seeing there from the Valley Hills Boulevard on. So, yeah, feel free to contact Jamie,
yeah,
not Tony, but
Oh,
Jamie
and
on that.
Jordan talks to James quite a bit.
There you go,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, for sure. Anything else there?
This was not in the agenda materials, but I think it would be a good thing to repost in our agenda materials so that
After this
everybody.
meeting, we'll repost.
There, thank you, thank
Yeah,
you,
we've got a couple of other things that we'll have to repost if the board wants to see them.
thank you.
Okay, moving on, come on. I lose control. There we go. So we've added some drone inspections to our inspections overall. So this picture here is Kelly Newman, he's one of our linemen, that chose to get, the Part 107 certification with the FAA. And we require anybody that flies and does inspections to have that. And so myself and Kelly are the two that have that right now. And so we've been up in the Oak Haven and Swiss Mountain areas. So each of these blue dots on the left are places that the drone was when a picture was taken. And we're finding stuff that needs to be repaired, maintenance that needs to be done. This area, there was a neutral here that came out of the dead end chute, and so that was one thing that we were able to just dispatch a crew up and get that fixed. Here's another one. So this is actually up like the Swiss Alpine Road up above Midway. This kind of different, I don't know what color, cyan? I don't know what color you call that. Lighter
Light
blue.
There you go,
Yes.
yes.
So it's showing this picture on the right. As we zoom in, you'll see that this arrestor had broken off. And so we were able to get our lineman up there and they fixed that one as well. Here's another one, kind of up the main drag. So this cross arm's broken, and when we zoom in, you can see it's split completely through. The
How old's that? How old's that? That's gotta be an
all this stuff up here is pretty old.
line, yeah.
Older or younger than you?
Me?
Probably older.
Yes, I don't know, that's a good point, for sure. But you can also see this cross arm brace broke off and just kind of hanging there. And that's one that we actually got a picture of them repairing. So they got up there, changed out the arm, they put on the bird guard, and just made sure that it was all good to go. Here's one clear at the top. So you can see this neutral, if we zoom in, it come off the bolt and was just hanging there. And so you can see this bolt right here, and the insulator and conductors just rubbing up against the pole. So that's another one that we were able to get up there and fix.
Just for your information, so the neutral conductor is the return path, so it's not one of the faces. So that's why it could like get in contact and not create any issues
But
because it is actually grounded as well in many. So it looks bad. It is bad and it should be fixed. But it would be worse if it would be one of the faces, one of the energized,
Yeah.
high line. So just
And the other thing is, well, so a lot of these, we've been able to find, this is really blurry, I understand that, but this is a picture where the hot phase, so this is single phase, and then the neutral are both down in the trees. And so we sent our tree trimming contractor up there to trim that out. And so we're able to get a lot, this way of inspection is awesome because we're able to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time and get high quality pictures. We, so last week we sent a lineman up there and he inspected everything from the ground, and then we were just up there today and he couldn't see from the bird's eye view stuff that needed to be fixed that we found today of the very pole that he looked at from the ground last week. And so as far as system inspections go, these are poles. So we're 83% on that one. Secondary boxes, getting close to 80%. Transformers, so
The green's the ones that are done.
green are done, red are not. We have been sending our crews back through verifying, so if they're red, that either means they sometimes couldn't find it or couldn't get to it because people have planted around it or put stuff in the way. There's some transformers we find that they're just like a piling thing for anything in their yard, and so we have to call that homeowner and say, hey, you need to move all this stuff so we can get to it. But we are actively working on these. I think these are switches.
Yeah.
And so we are, we're working on all of that stuff, and we're finding a lot of stuff and trying to take care of it right away.
You've come a long way since you started this project a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yep, for
Yeah.
sure. So
What do you think's a realistic timeline, Jordan? Another 2 years to try to get to 100%, or do you think it's just what do you think?
well, and I don't think we'll ever be done,
Right.
but because we're always adding new infrastructure and
Well, to get rid of more red dots, let's
Right,
put it
yeah.
that way.
it's hard to say because the guys that are doing the inspections are also trouble calls, so they're going out and any day they're, it's hard to say. But we're definitely putting more guys on it, trying to knock that down as fast as we can. Some of these in like the Midway area, you see the red points there. We're sending guys back through and trying to clean that up 100% before we move on to a new area.
Okay.
And so we're just trying to get everything buttoned away.
Well, I'm assuming the higher elevations would need to be done in the summer,
Yep,
right?
that's
So
exactly it.
Midway and Timber Lakes, are you really going to try to hit this summer?
That's where we're focusing right now.
Okay.
And then, like you said, in the winter time, then we'll come back down into town where we can access everything. And like the Valley Hills area, a lot of backyard stuff, and so we try to focus that as well right now, because when there's snow, trying to get behind fences, and it's a little bit troublesome.
Do you need anything from us on
I
this?
don't think so. I think we've got what we need. Just
Just need time.
need time, yeah.
Well, we'd love to have another update, maybe around the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
You could come in or maybe February, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're all so thankful that you're getting those trees cut down in the pictures that you're showing us, and anywhere else you need to do that. That is so important. We know what's happened in other places when it
Yes.
hasn't been done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good job. Good job. You guys be
Thanks.
safe out there. Don't run across any marijuana plants, right? And be sure to report those, right? when you
Yes,
need to.
yes, exactly.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
I don't think they
Thank
can
you.
report them.
The state park
Illegal search.
gets them out of there.
Yeah.
That's probably where they'd be, right? Is in
True.
the state park.
True. Okay. You good?
All
Okay.
right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate your patience. Cliff, now we're going to turn it over to you, please. This is Cliff Blomquist, our state ombudsman. And we
Well-
haven't had him report to us before, but I asked about it at the
What I
audit committee meeting, and he's been
Can
so
tell
kind
you,
to come.
whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because I have not had any phone calls since we tried to bring the 138 out of Midway. When we brought the 138 out of Prowood and Midway, and out of Park City to the junction. So that was pretty controversial. And that all's been, you've got it completed, you got the tie line in, and I'm just not hearing anything from. So how Jason got that 138 down the highway is a miracle to me, because that was a big issue to bring that 138 up the canyon.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger thing back in those days, the folks here in the valley thought it was primarily for Park City,
Yeah.
and it really wasn't for Park. It was because your growth is gone out of sight, and so I've just not heard anything.
They
So.
didn't understand.
No, well, and it's hard to explain it.
Oh, yeah.
That we only had a radial feed, one feed on the 138 out of Salt Lake City, so it really was a backup system to loop the systems all together. So you had more than one source of power serving your community. Because if you recall back, those that remember the Midway fire, we had to bring in generators back then to keep the community in business. And so those things have all changed. And so all I can say to you folks is whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Because your experience, and of course now you've changed from a lot of single dwellings to multi-unit complexes, and apparently all that, what you just shown on the map is going to be on multi-units. And so, but other than that, I don't have anything. And I'm not one, I'm more of a listener in your town. I'm here quite often. I frequent your restaurants, and I hear I've just not heard anything that's negative so far.
Well,
And the drone thing is a kind of an interesting deal. When I was watching that, normally what would happen, the absentee owner that owns a cabin in the spring would call you on the phone and tell you his power's out. And so what that created, you making a trip up so they didn't have to. And so your drone's that's gonna do a lot of good things for you. It just made a lot of sense for what you're doing. So, but other than that, I just wanted to come over and just in person. I'm not an email type guy.
okay.
I tell this story years ago. Our old manager says if you put it on paper, it'll come back to haunt you, and you can see what's happening in the world today. So
That is such
I'd
a true
rather just
statement.
come over and say hello. But that's all I've got. What I would like is an update of, because you're going to expand the territory. Give me some updates on your new regs, because you've gone in for a rate increase. I will say this, back about years ago when municipalities deallocated a crisp power back in those days, the power company wanted some of that power and they didn't get it. But you guys went ahead and you put in your generators, you bought into Hunter 2, you bought into IPP, and you was putting your excess power into Power Pool. And it made a lot of sense. A lot of municipalities didn't do that. Now they're in behind the wheel. And so there was some good forward thinking back in those days. But other than that, that's all I can say. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Do we thank Ray Farrell for that?
It was, yeah, Ray.
That's good. Let's give him credit.
Ray did that.
Mhm.
And it's like when we did it, and it was kind of not common when we were gonna serve Timber Lakes for the Utah Power to contract with a municipality.
Yeah.
We were buying power off you guys
Yeah.
to serve Timber Lakes back in those days. And of course now you've taken that all over, but yeah, that was not because the only power we had to come out of Tabby or out of the other mountain.
Wow.
And so, and they wanted, and it made a lot of sense and Ray and I put that deal together, and we bought the land out of Midway for the substation, and so working with you guys has been kind of a pleasure, and so it's better to work with you than fight you. So.
Obviously, we've heard nothing but good
Good
about you too.
Okay.
So Jason?
I just wanted to give the board background on Cliff. Cliff was the regional manager for the Park City area for Utah Power and Light and Rocky Mountain Power. whatever names they were through his career through there. And that's where we got to know Cliff really well. Knew he was, you know, a fair, good guy to deal with, and also knew the electric business and rates and all of those types of things. And, you know, that's why he was selected as the ombudsman for, you know, the customers that live outside of the owner cities. Now, keep in mind, you all are the representatives for the customers in the owner cities. But when we did that service territory, you know, deal with Rocky Mountain Power and got a new franchise agreement with Wasatch County, and working with the Public Service Commission of the state of Utah, it was recommended that we get an ombudsman in place to, you know, be a sounding board for ratepayers that live outside of the municipal owners' boundaries. So Cliff's done a great job for us since 2011 doing that. So
I have to tell you, I dig back. I employed his father.
yeah. Wow.
So we're going back a lot. But you know, what I was saying earlier on, when we first got into Park City, it was more of a seasonal issue, and we hired mostly contractors. And then times changed. People work year round, and so those things have all changed. You find that out now. They don't stop in November like they used to.
No,
They just keep
there's
building.
no,
Yeah, they
no
just keep
downtime.
building. So,
You mean
well, I
leased?
appreciate what you've done here, and sometimes I feel guilty because you're doing such a good job. I don't have anything to do.
That's, we
So,
prefer that.
which
Yeah,
is-
but you're there for us if
Well,
we need you.
well, that's true.
That's the
What
best
he
way to
was
have
saying was, in the regulated utility, they have the Public Service Commission they can go to. That's why where you're not regulated, you had to have the, I
Yeah.
guess that's how it came out. You just had a person, and that's where I came in, so.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you so much.
appreciate
It's
you.
great
Thanks for
to
coming
meet
in.
you.
Well, I,
Don't
you can
touch that
keep
one.
track of him now. Well, yeah, if I could get just kind of an update
We'll
on,
get that.
okay.
Yeah, I'll get.
We
with
good?
you. I'll get with you next week, and I'll meet up with you and get you a hard copy and
All right.
Well, we
all
look-
that.
All righty.
So,
We look forward to seeing you around town then.
Well,
And we'll let you
It'll
know
be
if
at
there's
the-
any issues,
the-
or you'll let us know,
the
right?
hub or the chicks or
yeah.
one of those places. They're out the
Thank
rodeo
you.
ground. So thank you
Thank
guys.
you very
Thank
much. Good to see you.
See you, Ken.
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready for our, what was the third agenda item, a discussion on the Heber Valley Railroad request for the land lease. Mark, do you want to come over and join us? And Jason, if you don't mind, if you could pull up that map, let's see what progress you're making on this. Please. Mark Nelson's joining us, and we're glad you're here, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is last staking that me and Mark talked about. We sent a few back and forth to each other, and so this one, so just so everybody knows what we're talking about, this is the Questar high pressure line going down to the power plants.
The
on
yellow
our
line.
Property, and this is, you know, our south campus. This is a power plant here, cold storage facility here, and then the line shop here. And these etch marks or these dash marks are the edges of that Enbridge high pressure gas line easement. And what Mark and I, you know, I'm passing emails back and forth. I'm sorry I haven't talked to you, Mark, but this is 59 feet, so that's the current fence line. This is 59 feet in on this edge of property from just the north and south. So there's probably right through here, and we haven't had a formal survey of this. You know, if this is what, you know, we ultimately agree upon, we'll get a survey done, and an actual square footage of, you know, whatever we're gonna lease to the train here. But that would move our fence line from where it is now into that black line. And like I say, it's 59 feet from the north property line and the south property line. And I never heard back from you, Mark, so I figured we were pretty
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
Is this lease to own, lease to eventually own, or?
Yeah,
If
I
possible,
think
that'll
that's,
fit
I
their
mean,
budget
that's kind of
and
what
allow
we
them.
discussed.
Mark, will that allow you, sorry, Kevin, will that allow you then to put in the fence if you have a lease to own longer term contract initially?
Mhm.
Then you can see at what point you may or may not want to purchase it?
Right, and again, the idea is, you can see where our driveway is currently, and yeah, right where you have the cursor now. The idea would be that potentially someday that's a driveway along the fence to access the shop at the railroad.
Could there be parking as well, or,
I suppose there could be, but that's,
okay.
Not wide enough for much
But,
parking.
but you can work with,
Yep.
within the parameters of that gas line,
right.
right? Okay.
What Mark and I talked about was if this, you know, if whomever's master plan, you know, I've seen so many of them, and he probably has too, but a lot of them do away with 650 south. Or 600 south here. But that
600 west.
would, or 600
Yeah,
west,
yeah.
sorry. But that would allow the access into Mark's campus through here over the top, basically, that gas line easement. So,
With the potential to pick up, if it's 600 west is vacated, pick up that area for,
parking or rail lines or whatever.
Whatever.
I can't remember
Whatever.
exactly what that plan looked like.
right, okay.
And there's lots of controversy and lots of stakeholders over all of that.
Park and Rec's come up with a new plan that's better than Lithgow's, I think.
Yeah, well, like I
Is that
say, I've
just
seen so
recently?
many, and Mark probably has too, but
Can
a
we
lot of
see
them
it?
do
I need to
away
see.
with that 600 west. so.
I just thought.
Jason, let me ask you a question about the gas line. So you show it ending right there, but does it keep going over and into that white
It
building?
moves 650.
No, it
Gives-
goes clear over
gives that
here,
room.
Yeah, that's what I
by
thought.
your,
It gives that room for us.
your big
Right.
It's
building.
Heber
Where
should
those
have
things are on the
three
roof
duplex,
and all
that.
600 west.
We'll all got to work
Yeah.
together and hopefully get it.
And that building's gonna go away.
Oh,
But it
both
cuts the
of
problem
those
of
then.
having
No,
Park and Rec people
so
crossing
this
between
building will go away.
600.
This building's fairly new and
Oh, it
it's,
was
It's well done.
okay.
this
pretty good
building
idea.
is gonna go away,
Okay,
which will allow us to have
some room
some
there.
additional room on this frontage, and then this building will go away.
So if we were to do that, if we were to do this and say we do it this year or sometime very soon, do you have a preference? Would you want us to go put that fence up right when we do it?
I'll just tell you, I can't do it this year, with our limited space right now, because, we're waiting for this other facility to get done, and then we can free up some additional space in this location to get some of this material moved.
Well, and that's fine with us. We're not
And then,
urgent to do it.
You mean you can't do it, have it done? If-
Well, I would ask the question, I guess, first you, Jason, and Mark, I guess both, in terms of kind of the timing of needing it. If you don't need the fence moved and you don't need it moved right away, I don't see a need to force a movement prematurely.
No, I mean, what I would like to do
When
is
you
get
need
the
a-
deal done.
Yeah.
Understood.
We can
So
move
you
it
know you'd
whenever.
you'd plan towards
Yeah,
it.
agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. There you go. So Jason, one question on that. Phase 2 of the campus improvements that would come with this next bond, everybody, is $1 million or so to redo Jason's existing office into total inventory with, more security there for the incredible amount of inventory that we have.
It's warehouse space.
Yes, and so Jason, are you saying that you wouldn't want this land to be, or at least the fence to be moved and them to take over the, whatever needs the
I
railroad
just-
has until after the phase 2 campus is done, or just the phase 1
I
new
think,
building?
I think we can start working with Mark on the fence moving just as soon as we can get, kind of moved into here.
So once the new building's
And,
done and you're moved in, okay?
This doesn't allow us, but when we go down and visit that project, there is some space that can get freed up here for, maybe
Good.
this pole pile. We haven't done a full layout yet of all of this.
Okay,
But Mark and I need to work on a couple other things that are utility related, and, I think we need to get that cleared up too, so we at least know what we've gotta do. There's some, both city and, telecom infrastructure right up here that would be in the way of Mark's future roadway, and also down on this corner. There's some utility infrastructure down on this corner that would have to be relocated in order for him to actually, have the freedom through here to actually have a roadway.
And that,
So-
would that cause a big problem? Is that a big problem to move that stuff?
It's
or-
just money.
Now you get them to come move it.
Jason, we talked about moving it on the north side of that 300 South, when they wanted to put the switch up there at
There's
the
less,
corner.
there's less right here, and I'm hoping that when we get this all cleared up with telecom, maybe this can go bye-bye.
Well, have we
so-
talked to those people yet? Has Bud
yeah.
Mahas talked with them about cleaning up the south side of the road?
Yeah, we've got a plan in place up here. We're still working with, the CenturyLink or Lumens of the world, and the All West of the world that, are very hard to deal with, but, my hope is, once we get kind of that all cleaned up in this corner, that telecom can go away. The other is Heber City, meaning there's a Heber City manhole right here that we're not sure what that is. And maybe that,
Manhole, did you say? Manhole? Sorry.
yeah, just a
Okay, thank
manhole
you.
cover.
Okay,
And then there's some Heber City infrastructure, water infrastructure right here on this corner that, maybe we can get cleaned up. And then this down here would just be between Mark and Heber Light and Power, because these are actual, power infrastructure that's in here. And then I think there's a silly Comcast pole. I'm trying to see if we can see the shadow of it. But I think Comcast has a pole that, from way back, but, I think getting with Comcast, we can maybe get that cleared up pretty quickly by abandoning it, so.
but is that, if it's theirs, then we'd have to ask them to abandon it?
Yeah, but you're not using Comcast, are you? And I'm not using Comcast, so,
You're the only ones on the block so
yeah.
far. So, do you know if the park uses it, Kendall? Does it run under that road?
I don't know.
Well, it would have been for one of us that used it at some,
Okay,
before me or something. Because, I think when I walked out there, I think I identified that as Comcast, but we'd have to just confirm that. But there's still some cleanup we need to do according to this plan. But I think the main thing for the board is,
Sounds like stuff that probably needs cleaned up anyway.
does this work? And, if it does, then it would give Mark the access he needs if, whatever kind of planning that takes 600 away.
So if I can ask, I kind of step back, kind of big picture
Yeah.
first. Mark, I'm just, and maybe this was mentioned before, so I apologize. Is it your intent or thinking that the railroad would need this, or only would need this if 600 West is vacated?
Good question. So with what we know today, we need about 4 to 6 feet west of the existing fence for some tracks we want to put in
Okay,
there.
regardless of whether the street,
Regardless,
understand.
and that's a project that we would probably be doing right now if we had the $2 million that it's gonna cost to do it. But we don't, and so we're not.
So is that
I showed you that picture when I was
right?
here last
So,
time.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, that part of the work or need for the land, it's not all the area, but at least that minimum part would be done regardless of whether
Yes,
600 West is vacated
right.
Okay, good to
in the
know.
future.
Correct.
Good to know.
Okay, so I'm hearing you need that at least for a minimum for that, and then the additional footage area really is if that happens in the future, and therefore you're gonna make that an access.
Yes.
Right.
And so let's say that we get the lease and that never happens. Let's
Yeah.
say whatever those plans are, they change and they go away. We would certainly like the option to use that ground
Extra
from the fence
space.
in for something.
Okay,
It might be parking, it might be parking train cars, but it might be, who knows what,
okay,
a
so,
museum.
so under that scenario, then basically, if I'm hearing it, then even if 600 West never gets vacated by the city,
Yeah.
that you would still want to use the balance of that land.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
basically the railroad would be committing to all of it
Yep,
regardless.
yep.
But you would use it all until you put in the fence.
Right.
Right, and we, at this time, with everything we know, are not in any hurry
Okay.
to make that happen.
Well, maybe next year.
Just want it done so you can plan.
Just want your planning ready to go.
Yeah, it wouldn't be any sooner than next year.
I'll only throw out, because we're talking about two parties here, and
Yeah,
if the railroad doesn't need to move the fence right away, and Jason, if you don't need that fence moved right away,
Yeah.
That's good.
I think that an agreement that would kind of be flexible in that regard.
Well, I think we can put some options in the agreement too, that if Mark ends up not needing it, then, you know,
Yeah.
the portion that he does need, you know, like I say, the fence is gonna get moved. And if, you know, at that point in time, when we're ready to move the fence, if, you know, his crystal ball is crystal clear, then we move it to the black line. You know, if Mark's like, I don't wanna spend that right now, then we'd move it in, but we could also, you know, make sure we have this option kind of, legacy, so that, you know, if that expansion does need to happen, you know, we've got a document in place, maybe Mark and I are long gone,
yeah.
there's a
Mhm.
document in
But
place.
there's still
that
something there in place
Gives,
that,
gives that option.
Basically, yeah, if you know, the two parties can flesh out all the kind of what-if scenarios and make
Right.
sure they're all addressed in the
Yeah.
agreement, and
So what's our next step then?
Try to get that agreement in place.
Get an agreement or do the survey too?
Well, we'll survey it, and then we'll get that agreement in place based on those meets and bounds.
So-
Do you need authorization from this board to go ahead with working on that agreement, or is it just a given?
We just want direction right now. Eventually, that'll probably come back to the board for
I think start
an
working
actual
on it.
approval
Yeah.
action.
Let's look at it.
Okay, Sid, we haven't heard from you yet. Sid, if you want to come off mute and say anything, you can, especially if you're okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm just looking at Google Earth. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening there. It'd have to be moved, power lines and so on. But I'm fine with this. It just doesn't impact any of Heber Light and Power's potential on their property, for movement. If, let's say, they put that fence in right now, there's that building, existing building. I don't know how you'd get a truck or something around it. So other than that, if it's going to be in the future, I'm fine with it.
And that building's gonna come down as part of the Phase 2 campus improvement SID
Yeah.
for the next bond.
Yep.
Yeah, so this building will get torn down, and this building will get torn down,
Yeah. Okay.
eventually. And at this 59 feet, and I understand Mark's need for the 59 feet. I mean, he's gonna need this access, if this road goes away, to get anything like a big rig diesel with heavy equipment. I think the main thing everybody's got to realize is
It
both
happens.
Mark and I are industrial. I
Yes.
mean, I know
Yeah.
he's kind of touristy, we're a
But that
utility,
entrance
but
to get to the
we're
shop
industrial.
with the train
so
car.
We have big stuff coming in,
Yeah.
so.
Right. Well, he has too,
Yeah.
believe me,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it can't be flown in.
No.
I
No, we
think-
got, both of us have to get, big cranes and various other
Yeah.
things, and we've always worked really good together in the past as far as that goes, as far as,
Again,
access.
again, I know it was mentioned whether or not it needs board approval or direction, but I think let the two parties
Continue.
come up with, draft an agreement and.
Excellent, excellent. Does
I
that
think
sound
that-
right?
As
That-
well,
thank you.
as
That's
well
right.
as the survey, which is gonna go hand in hand.
The survey will go into the agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, we want to know the square footage.
And then you
right,
can
your
flesh out
timeline.
between the two parties all the what ifs and scenarios, and when they're at a point to bring it to the board, then bring it to the board.
Yeah, that's
Sounds good.
fantastic. I really want to thank you, board, for looking at this objectively and seeing how this could be a win-win for both. Thankfully, this part of the Heber Light and Power campus has never been planned for anything in all of the improvements. So it was, a storage area, parking area, and it has the gas line that can't
Yeah.
really have much use to dig in or anything. So
and it's
anyway,
not,
it could be a win-win for both.
it's not a detriment to Heber Light and Power.
Mhm.
It's not like he wants to take it right through the center of our, I
Well, that wouldn't
mean,
work.
yeah,
And
Right.
Mark, this, we probably talked about this before, that this does give you the solution of changing the engine, without having to cross the street or.
Yeah, so the drawing that I showed you before that had some tracks there includes removing all the existing tracks in front of the depot, clear down to the other driveway on the other side, and redoing those
To make that
in a
work.
way that we can switch the trains.
okay.
And I think all of
Which
you
is a
are
better
going to
solution,
be
yeah.
amazed and
Which
are
is
amazed.
a much better solution
Yeah.
for everyone.
I just know that the Heber Valley Railroad is changing to improve its offerings and its amenities. And it is very impressive, and it's only going to be more so under Mark's leadership. I mean, it is so much more than it ever was. And it's only going to be even more so with the plans that are being discussed there. So I know the Railroad Board is very appreciative of, your willingness to work with the railroad on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything
Thanks,
else?
Mark.
Any other
Yeah.
questions or concerns?
No,
Okay, so-
me and Mark will
so
keep
in
working on this,
July-
we'll get it figured out.
In July, if you can have a draft agreement and try to
Oh.
work through that, or August, let's not let it sit forever, okay, is all I'm saying. Let's try to get this done since everybody's willing to work and have it go forward.
And you know Tom, and have worked with Tom, if you
Yeah.
want us to
Oh.
do anything, just reach out.
I'll shoot an email to the group to make sure we're capturing these what ifs. I think
That'd be great.
if we have kind of those foundational underpinnings, we can
That'll be
put together the rest of it easy enough, yeah.
If you want to ask Tom if he's willing to draft what Adam sends out,
Yeah,
then that's just gonna save Heber Light and Power more time and cost on this.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah, we'll just we'll get with Adam, staff here, and we'll get our list of what ifs.
Yeah.
And, you know, Mark
Thank
can
you.
get his list, and then, you know, Tom can go to,
Okay,
drafting, so.
If it's not a
Okay.
problem
Does that
for
work?
Tom.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think he's done it before. Thank you very much, Mark. Good
Okay.
to see
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Thank
See
you for
ya.
joining us.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
See ya.
Hang on one second. Hopefully that'll come back to us sooner rather than later, everybody, because otherwise it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. All right, we're ready now. And everyone, remember, the goal is to finish up agenda items 4, 5, 6, and 8 so that we could go take a tour at the new building. So we'll go to agenda item number 4, discussion on the levelized cost of energy, LCOE, regarding the replacement of Plant 1, including the calculation for the unit strike price. Jason, please proceed.
Yeah, so, there was some discussion last, month on kind of return on investment and, on, you know, power plant and, how we, sorry. There we go. Now I can do it. So if I shared the wrong thing. So just for the board, what we do is, you know, a utility company looking at, you know, adding additional generation and, you know, what that value brings and at what cost. What we do is, you know, we do a levelized cost of energy. So, you know, I know, you know, I've had conversations with, you know, customers that, you know, come from the business side of the, you know, let's say, you know, a toy manufacturer, and, you know, they want to build another plant to, you know, to build Lego blocks, and, you know, they do a study on what the return on that investment's going to be. You know, that's where that map of our service territory comes up, is, you know, we're a monopoly within that service territory. And so we have an obligation to serve those customers. We have the obligation to serve our loads. And quite honestly, we have that obligation whether we're making money or not. So where we make money is in, or, you know, get to that break-even point, or to that, you know, point where we have a little bit of money in reserves and we're breaking even for the customers and not overcharging them for the 10% profit or something like that that Rocky Mountain Power gets baked into their rates. You know, that's not our business model, and so the way we go about it, and I think we brought this up with the UAMPS projects, that, you know, the decision came with those power sales contracts for the, you know, the combined cycle plant up by Pocatello, the Power County project, and also the peaking plant near Holden, Utah, in Millard County. So those are the Millard County and Power County projects and UAMPS, in which just, you know, within the last year have entered into power sales contracts on. So, you know, this is kind of the industry standard as far as think tank goes, as far as, you know, how they develop these levelized costs of energy for different fuel sources. And so this slide is, you know, it comes from Lazards, which is kind of a think tank, consulting company that does these publications on these various things for utility companies. And so you can see, you know, if you're looking at, you know, say, doing some rooftop ownership solar program, your levelized cost of energy based on this analysis is gonna come in at $117 to $282 per megawatt hour. You know, very expensive. That's a very expensive program. You don't see very many of them. Same with community owned. You know, a lot of your community owned projects where, you know, like City of St. George has one down there in which they build it, you know, for their customers to subscribe to. You know, fairly expensive energy for a solar project. You know, I don't know exactly where theirs came in, but it was, you know, well over $100. And then like our utility scale solar projects, you know, Red Mesa down in the Navajo community, and Steel One up at the Utah-California or Utah-Idaho border. You know, they came in the $30 to $40 range. So, you know, right inside of this levelized cost of energy for those. We're looking at the Fremont project right now within the UAMPS group, which is solar and storage at the utility scale. And, you know, right now where that number is kind of in that $80 to $85 to $90 range. So, you know, clearly within, you know, the realm of reason, you know, based on the experts' levelized cost of energy. We're still dabbling with some geothermal projects with UAMPS. You know, it's hit or miss each month whether there's a positive report on those or a negative report on those. But both of those projects are kind of landing within this realm of reason by the experts for the LCOE for geothermal. We're not going to deal with any wind offshore, but our wind projects, you know, both Horse Butte and Pleasant Valley, are right within this realm of wind onshore. Horse Butte, year to year, depending on capacity factor, is sometimes on the outside of this. It's in the $80 to, you know, $85 range, depending on how much wind blew that on any particular year. So it's on the high side. Pleasant Valley wind, which is in Wyoming, it's kind of more in the low middle side of the levelized cost energy. So, you know, both of them are, you know, at least competitive. So last month we talked about gas peaking, and the Holden project, the Miller County project in UAMPS, you know, when they came with those power sales contracts, they gave the project management committee the ability to set the price of when to kill that project if it exceeded too high of a price of levelized cost of energy. And the project management committee in this, you know, last meeting set that price at $145 per megawatt hour. Even though with the analysis, with the, you know, level 3 to level 4 estimates on a lot of that stuff, came in at around $128 a megawatt hour. So, but definitely within, you know, the reason of, you know, this expert consulting group that makes these publications. You can see, you know, we bailed on a nuclear project that, you know, Doug Hunter at UAMPS was touting was going to be $80 a megawatt hour. You know, based on these experts, there's a reason the board kind of bailed from that. You know, one, we couldn't get subscription. Two, you know, it wasn't really within the realm of what the experts are saying nuclear is actually going to come in Here's coal, even though no new coal is being built anywhere. You know, our coal units, like right now, IPP, which is still burning coal, is, you know, at the lower end of this. Hunter, which has all of its debt paid off and, you know, is operating, you know, at a fairly low price of around $50 per megawatt hour. So levelized cost of energy on our coal units, of course, we're in a, you know, coal state and everything else, you know, clearly where it should be on the very low end of these scales. And then gas combined cycle. So, you know, that's the project that we did the power sales contract with UAMPS with in Power County in Idaho up by Pocatello area. And, you know, right now that levelized cost of energy for a build out with building transmission, everything else is kind of in that $90 range. So, so I guess my marker's off a little bit. So right in here, kind of, you know, high midpoint of that scale. And that's based on, you know, really conservative estimates at this point. So let's just go back to gas peaking. And you know, Bart and Emily and myself have all been working on, okay, do we go ahead and replace plant 1? I kind of gave you guys a conceptual model of that, and we can review that again. You know, a little bit after this discussion. But in this gas peaking, you know, Emily did her own levelized cost of energy analysis for that peaking plant, using, you know, the parameters that she thought would be needed. And I'm sorry she can't be here right now, but she's at CRETA meetings over in Colorado. But her number came in with $4.50 gas, the biggest variable component, at $117 for the levelized cost of energy for plant 1. And that's with all 6 bays being filled up.
Is that in the new building, Jason, or is that in your existing building?
That's in the new building. That would be the replacement for plant 1.
What was the number? Sorry.
$117.
And then would it entail the big generators that you had mentioned before in the past, or the same size that we have right now?
It's her model, which was using 3500 series, and I think she used the 3520H models. And, you know, thank goodness Bart's here, because I'm not going off of memory with him. But we, you know, I've had discussions with both Bart and Emily. And she fully loaded the plant all at once. And Bart can kind of walk you through how he did his LCOE on the replacement of plant 1. But they were done independent of each other. I don't know that you even shared really analysis or anything like that. And that's, you know, that's a good thing. That's what I kind of wanted. I wanted, you know, a couple of eyes on this. But hers came in at 117, which is, you know, kind of at the lower end of the scale, and it gets into like the gray area on the Lazard scale, which is, you know, that's a pretty much no-brainer type number. And then Bart came in even lower. You know, just talking to Bart a little bit, I know he incrementally added units, but I think he used the same interest rate when I reviewed it. So, you know, a couple of the key elements are definitely there. It's just, you know, 2 different eyes on it, 2 different analyses. So you want to go over yours a little bit, Bart?
Yeah, mine, I took the last 5 years of unit runs through all of our engines. took the average number of hours per year on each engine, and then I took the engine that had the best number of hours, best run rate, and I assumed that we put 6 of them in, but I assumed we put them in a year at a time, and we were buying them at the reduced cost that we get from the field follow rate. And I came in at about $91 if we take the cost of the technician, the cost of the debt service to build the building, cost of the engines as we acquire them one at a time, as well as the cost of the gas. I also use the 450 a decatherm based on that higher efficient engine. And so I came in at 91 and a quarter. So that'd be our strike price. And that, it's important to know that we don't strike unless we hit that number.
That's where me and you disagree. So, anyway.
Unless there's a need, but
Right.
generally, you know, if the market is 180 megawatt hour, then it makes total sense for us to strike. If it's 72, then maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense to strike unless we need to run the engine for some other reason. But then, like I say, I based mine entirely off of the number of hours we run, not the number of hours available, but the number of hours that we average to run.
When you're building them with the field follows, is it, do you have the right timeline in there as far as what we need to be able to have things for testing, or is it, can we buy from other people's testing?
We usually just buy from, I mean, they're pretty good to slot one in there when they want to test one.
I just mean, like, would they slot them in fast enough, would we get through their testing period fast enough that the purchase date makes sense with the model?
I'm probably accelerated by a year, maybe 2 on, because we're averaging to buy, since I've been here, an engine about every other 2 years.
What's the average cost of the engines, please?
The average cost on a field follow or without?
Both.
So our average cost on a field follow is coming in about 1.2, 1.3 with all the peripherals. If we were to buy it direct, we're in the 2.5 to 3 range.
The field follows how much now?
About 1.2, 1.3 roughly.
But that's the same you just said as the buying it outright.
Yes.
So it's the same.
No, 1.2,
No.
1.3,
2.5.
and then 2.5 to
2.5 if we bought it
If
outright.
I was to
That's what I'm
call
trying
a
to figure out.
Caterpillar or Wheeler
Okay.
and say I need a new engine next year, because it's gonna take that long,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna pay 2.5 to 3 million. But if they come in and say, we want to fill all this thing, yeah, we're probably gonna be here 5 years before we buy it, by the time we do all the testing and all that other stuff.
Does that decreases the price then?
It
The
decreases.
5 years of testing and so forth. Okay. Okay. That's certainly a good strike price, right, Jason? But why do you disagree with
Well, I'll go over that.
when to turn them on, please?
And Bart can also chime in as well. So on any peaking facilities that I know of in the industry, you know, the way that the calculation for strike is, now the levelized cost of energy works great if you're at, you know, a 90 to 100% capacity factor plant. Meaning, you know, you're putting that unit on and you're running it, and you know, you're not shutting it down for any reason. A peaking plant is generally run in that 20 to 30% capacity factor in just the hours that it makes the most sense. And so
your valuation isn't the unused time on the plant, it's the potential overage
Right.
cost of what else you might buy.
So,
It's your opportunity cost.
in Bart's analysis, you know, with a peaking plant, what you're gonna have is, okay, that plant's gonna sit idle and you're gonna have all of your fixed costs, no matter what, for you know, if it's a 20% capacity factor that year, then for 80% of the hours, you're gonna have all of your fixed costs. You know, you won't have the fuel costs, of course, but you're still paying your fixed costs. You know, you're paying your interest, you're paying your debt, and you're also paying to man the place, keep the place maintained, all of that type of stuff for those 80 hours, or 80% additional, or the 80% you're not utilizing the facility. And so, you know, like the peaking plants that I know of, you know, that I've worked with in the past, you know, this is kind of the, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing the right thing here.
The left-handed mouse is needed.
Yeah, and the left-handed mouse.
Oh, yes.
And so, you know, I'm not saying either one of us are wrong. It's just the way you want to utilize the equipment. And so this is how we currently calculate our strike. And this is a 3516H unit. I just grabbed one. And you know, it's just kind of a down and dirty type look at it. But this is kind of what our dispatchers are doing. So this unit runs at 1,650 kilowatts an hour. The cost today roughly is about $2.50 a decatherm for index gas. And then you've got your variable O&M accruals. And so your operating summary comes down to, you know, your average fuel cost per megawatt hour is about, you know, $25.50. Your variable O&M cost is $14. And your variable overhaul cost is $4.08. Which gives you an incremental strike price of $44.54. So, you know, that's, if the market, like if you're making a decision, you know, the next day, because we got to get our schedules in, you know, for tomorrow, today, and it looks like these calculations come in this way, then your strike price on that particular unit is $44.54. And so if the market, so if you're making a decision, okay, market tomorrow is $50, then you would strike that unit. Even though the LCOE is, you know, let's just say under this scenario, the LCOE is $100, the levelized cost of energy is $100, you would strike that unit at $44.50 because you're covering all of your variable costs, your O&M, you know, your costs for the wear and tear on that particular unit, plus you're covering what you're going to accrue over time to overhaul that unit. And so you're basically in the money. You know, you're not covering your debt costs, and you may not even be capturing all of your labor, although you are capturing a little bit of labor in this variable O&M. But you're in the money, so it's cheaper for our ratepayers right now to run that machine at $44 than to buy market power at $50. So, and then, you know, this is kind of how you get to that. Because you've got your contract cost, let's say your contract cost in this scenario, if you were going to buy the energy, is $41 a megawatt hour. And so you take that unit cost of electricity at $41 per megawatt hour, and then you've got your transmission costs of $6.05 to get that energy to you, because you're buying it off the market. You're not generating it internally behind the meter. And so your delivered cost is, just under $50, $49.27. And, these are the, this is just a snapshot. I just grabbed 8 units here. But you've got variable strike potential on these units. And you've got a delivered gas cost of $2.55, O&M of $14, and the overhaul accrual of $4.08. And you put in your little bit of scheduling fees because you've got some scheduling fees through UAMPS for scheduling that machine day ahead. And so you can see that all of these, if you're going to buy off the market, it's $49. And all of these, are less than that. And so, right now, our people, if this number is, in the red, and all their other numbers are below that, then, they've got the green light to schedule that energy and run those units, because you're covering all your costs. And like I say, we're a monopoly. We've got to serve our load. And so this is our lowest cost of energy in that decision point, because to buy it off the market, it's almost $50, and you can run it for $8 less or whatever. And that's with a low capacity, just peaking plant. And the theory behind this, within the peaking plant is that with your levelized cost of energy, yeah, you've got those payments to be made, but you're always making margin off of market. So, if you've got, and that margin off of market, builds up and, pays into your levelized cost of energy. And you've got to remember that a lot of those costs, if you're only running 20% of the time, 80% of the time, you're paying all those fixed costs. And so that's why the peaking, if you're running a peaking plant, it's a little bit different than running, say, a high capacity factor plant where you're really close to your levelized cost of energy all the time. And that's the only place that Bart and I kind of differ in ours, is where you actually strike a peaking unit versus, because if you're going to expect to, kind of cover all your debt, through this, and this plant that we're proposing, where Bart's done this math, you're still going to be in the money a lot of times, and you might operate that plant 30% of the time at $91. But you get up to, where Emily's number came in at 117, and you might go, all but maybe 100 hours a year, where all you're doing is just paying for that stuff, and those engines aren't contributing at all. So
just make sure I'm following. I think I'm following it. Is that under the two scenarios that you're talking about that you do or not do?
Yeah.
Is that if you do, you've got those fixed costs of debt service, etc., that you're paying whether you turn them on or not.
Yep.
Or whether you buy it elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where you're talking about the big difference, because
well, but it also goes into risk management as well.
Okay.
If you're running your numbers based on this strike, then you've got the freedom to risk hedge a little bit differently. Meaning, you take the scenario of you're just gonna run that thing at levelized cost of energy, then you know, you might go out and hedge completely differently, and you might buy great big chunks of market power because the forwards are saying, you know, you're only gonna need to run that plant on the forwards, you know, 10% of the time. And so you go and buy all that energy. Well, what if your loads don't show? Then you're selling that energy back, possibly at a loss. And believe me, we've ran into that before too here, where you underestimate what your runs could be, and so you go and buy forward, and then your plant's just sitting idle, and you're selling energy back because your loads didn't come. And so this plant also gives you that ability. In either scenario, it gives you that ability, but you just got to. It's just a different way of kind of looking at it and a different philosophy. And like I say, on a, you know, on say like that Power County project that we're doing with UAMPS, you know, they're running their LCOEs right now at an 80% capacity factor. So, you know, so that's going to run really close to LCOE. They'll probably strike quite a bit underneath their LOCE on the front end of their debt, but they'll strike a whole bunch on the outside of their, you know, on the profit side of their LCOE, on the latter parts of their debt on that project. So I just want to go over that. This is how we do the analysis on whether or not to build a facility like this, and you know, this facility definitely comes in as, you know, a resource that could be used going forward, and you know, still be well within the margins of, you know, a really highly touted consulting firm that generates these reports on, you know, what's in the money, what's not in the money on that levelized cost of energy. So,
Couple of questions, please, Jason.
yeah.
So the 117 or the 9125 did take into account the actual debt on the new building or not? Is it just
Yes.
buying the generators?
No,
Debt on the
it's
new building for
debt
that
on the
portion?
debt on the new building and building
Okay.
and buying the generators.
And do
So,
any of these generators bring N1 capacity? Is it any of that for redundancy?
oh, absolutely. I think that's the other thing that you just can't put a number to, is what is that worth to the community and the board to have those machines in the availability of, you know, a cyber attack on the grid, and the grid's down for 3 or 4 days. You know, we do have the capability not to serve our whole load, but, you know, right now we've got 17 megawatts installed. We're, you know, a 55 megawatt peaking utility. You know, if that were to happen, you know, in April with our hydros high and everything, you know, we might be able to fill, you know, half to 3/4 of our load, you know. I mean, it'd take us some time to...
With the new 6
With-
generators?
No, just with what we have
Just
right
with
now.
what we have right now in hydro.
Yeah.
So if it's worst case scenario and we
There's
don't have
some-
hydro,
There's some assumptions there. Assumption is
right.
that the attack, the crypto attack in
Yeah.
this case, or whatever, doesn't knock out the gas grid.
Yeah.
Because-
Oh, yeah.
because if it does, those
There's
are
a whole
bad.
bunch of assumptions, like an
Hydro
earthquake.
keeps working, but
Like an earthquake, yeah, they could shut the gas system down, and, you know, you've still got the same issues.
Do we have any storage capacity for gas?
Oh, no.
we go way,
We
we
don't.
You'd have to have a big tank to
we go
run
through
that
it
long.
way faster than we
Yeah.
can store it.
Okay, just checking.
So, but like the wildfire
Oh, no.
issue, which is probably the most realistic risk in our area, you know, and, you know, Cliff talked about what happened in, you know, the early 90s here, when, you know, that wildfire went through and took out the transmission lines. I wasn't here at the time, but, you know, employees were
We
scrambling.
were, weren't we?
But
Yeah,
with the
that's,
generation we
was.
had installed, And with some generation, we were able to get up the canyon on rental. We were really, we were really fortunate to be able to keep the cow's milk and the,
Stores?
the gas pumps working and stuff like that, so.
So
The
you're
more
saying,
likely scenario was a couple of years ago, Rocky Mountain Power called and asked if we could fire up our generation because they was having trouble on one of the feeders to the valley.
Yeah.
And so it was offline, and with our generation and their other feeder, we kept
turn
our
off
way
and keep
lights
it
on,
down.
nobody noticed. But we very easily could have been in the rolling ground now.
Yep.
so can I ask, you said 17 megawatts installed right now.
Yep.
The 6 would be an additional 17 megawatts?
Well, it wouldn't be 6, it'd
No.
be 6 units,
6
2.5
units.
to 3 megawatts each.
Yeah.
So
So you could have
15?
as much
3
as
times more than we have now.
17 more on top.
That's what I was saying, another 17 on top of that? Okay, great. Hydros, how much again, please?
Oh, right now it's not very much because they've all backed down because of water.
Yeah.
But our hydro capacity is 3 megawatts that we own on the smaller streams.
Mhm.
And then the Jordanelle is nameplate 12 megawatts.
Okay. I appreciate understanding
And it never hits nameplate, right?
Through really high water years, like,
It goes over
it goes over nameplate,
Yeah,
yeah,
closer to 13.
13.7.
yeah,
that. That's nice.
so.
Okay, that's a really good discussion. It's just, it sounds like there's a potential there depending on what you want to propose with the 2026 bond that we're looking at, is to buy one or do field follow or to buy some. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Is there a potential there?
there's potential. The biggest issue is getting the facility, and then we definitely do a cost analysis of what makes the most sense to put in there. I mean, we're under contract to have 3 bays for Caterpillar to be able to test engines, and so it's likely that you would only build this plant and staff it with 3 engines out of the gate. It's either that or you gotta pull one out of another plant, so they have a little base.
And the question is whether to build all 6 or build to future potential capacity. Do either of your calculations in the O&M probably is where you'd see it, but are you future factoring the future cost of replacements? So
No.
as we think about like the age of the system, are you taking into account like what the replacement cost will be down the road too?
Build in overhaul costs.
You just build
It's just
in
overall, it's not actually, no replacement in there.
That iron ain't going anywhere. The valves get replaced, the pistons get replaced, the cylinders get replaced, things like that. But all the, like, the radiators and the turbos and all that stuff, they're components to the whole. And you just
Properly maintained, it's
maintained, and then, I mean, cause it's funny, Caterpillar provides us with a list of, at 500 hours you do this, 250 hours you do this, 2,000 you do this. And you follow that recommended procedure, but some would argue we haven't been setting aside this reserve fund for these overhauls, because he's collecting 4 cents every megawatt hour he runs, or $4, whatever. We haven't been putting aside because we've been putting it into the engine. I mean, we're rebuilding an engine every year, every other year.
We're constantly
It just
throwing
gets built into our
parts
budget.
out, yeah.
So,
Keeping them in top
But
form.
is the O&M costs outweighing any of the analysis that you've shown us?
that's why we got rid of Unit 6.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're
when
not
we
running all
sold,
6 units right now?
when we sold that unit, that unit was just a dog and it just hadn't really performed and, so we did a full-blown analysis and we ended up, selling that. Now we have a bay available to test until we get another facility built, because we can no longer test if we'd have kept that unit. So And it just never performed. You know, from day one, you know, it got through warranty period and various things, but it just continually had issue after issue. It was one of those you just continually threw parts at to buy another 300 or 400 hours on, and then you'd have to, you know, do that again. I will say,
the air permits on them too.
yeah, air permit is another one that limits hours. But like Bart said, you know, you do have a good indication of what that pricing's going to be, because the units come with, you know, a very good in-depth maintenance schedule, and both of these analyses took them to the 80,000 hour mark, which is where you reach that decision: do I replace the unit or do I pull it out and send it down to get completely reconditioned? So,
And getting rid of it has freed up space to get new test units the way we've been working.
right, and when, you know, the way that technology changes, and you know this, Aaron, you know, it's the same with engine technology. By the time you get one to that high of hours, and, you know, do you think, do we pull it out and send it, you know, down for, you know, a 6-month complete recondition? You know, you start looking at what the newer technology is and how more, you know, just how much more efficient it is and how much less fuel it burns and that type of stuff, that you end up making the decision, well, we're not going to do that. We're just going to surplus that and get a machine in here that burns, you know, a third less fuel.
Okay. I'm assuming we should go on, if that's okay.
Yes,
For
yes.
agenda item number 5, the discussion on the return on investment for future substations and other capital projects as it relates to cost of service. This is something that I've asked them to look at, everyone, because of the upcoming bond discussion and the capital, you know, infrastructure that's being proposed at this time, and I wanted to look at it from this point of view, the return on investment idea. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so once again, you know, we're not a typical business that, you know, is making a decision to, you know, build a plant for more Legos. We are a monopoly, and we have the, you know, we have the obligation to serve within that service territory. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, you see our service, currently our service territory is growing to the north, but we do have, you know, a lot of the county and other obligations of that to serve that's outside of really any of you all's control, meaning, you know, the Independences and the Daniel of the world that we have franchise agreements with that could suddenly explode, you know, and we'd still have that obligation to serve those within that territory. And so when we do a cost of service study and we have somebody like Mark Beauchamp come in here and do that analysis and set our rates, what he is doing in that cost of service study is he is identifying you know, with those class of customers, what it costs what that customer costs you on the distribution system, what it costs you on the customer service side, what it costs you on, you know, the resource side and the transmission and kind of substation side. And so, you know, you have to serve that customer. There's no decision here like, you know, the Lego manufacturer of, oh, it's not in the money, so we're not going to build that facility. The way the utilities look at it is the load has grown to a point in your other substations and on your transmission system that you don't have a choice but to build that, and in order to continue to serve your load. And And so that's why that's built into the actual rate model, so that you're collecting enough to meet the obligations of what the loads are, so that you can continue to build infrastructure if you're growing. It's also a fundamental component to the impact fee study. And so, you know, and Patricio's here, he can talk about it. We can only go with our substations up to, you know, that 80% range of loading. And after that, then we can't ever rely on that substation to pick up another neighborhood's load in case of an issue, you know, in that neighborhood of loads. 60%, sorry.
Yeah, 60%, not 80%?
60%.
But we're well over that at jailhouse.
Yeah, and that's what's really triggering, you know, that's why, I mean, if it, in a perfect world, if you know, in Patricio's role had his way 100% of the time, it'd be get another substation online before we hit 60%. But even from the investor owned that he used to work at, that's not the perfect world. I mean,
We plan it at 105% out there.
yeah.
Oh, really? So you go up, you
They
exceed
just
capacity?
plan until it burns. You don't have reliability.
But you don't have to worry about
Take the risk
literal
into account.
burning. You don't worry
I
about.
mean, you go until it overloads, or hopefully you build before, you know, it's,
Mhm.
what happened is
But there's a
that,
range there of risk tolerance, right?
Right.
well, and they have spare transformers in the yard that they
Oh,
could
okay.
potentially bring over. We don't have that privilege.
Yeah,
Even with the amount of inventory we have?
not of
These are
those
big
great big
transformers.
multi-million-dollar power transformers, no.
Wow, okay.
You know, within like the UAMS group and, you know, we've always come to each other's rescue, you know, when needed. But that's why we build substations with 2 transformers in them. Gives us a little bit more flexibility. You know, that's our standard build now on those power transformers. But the other thing to keep in mind is as we grow, then that stock needs to kind of grow with us. And so, you know, that's just something to keep in mind as we continue to grow, that we'll need that redundancy, because we're getting up into some classes of transformers where, you know, we can't call the city of Levan because they've got one they're not using to pull up here because it's not big enough for us, you know. And so that's something to keep in mind. But for just doing a pure, just down and dirty return on investment for a substation, because of we're a utility and we have that obligation to serve, and we don't want to get to the point where we can't make any more Legos before we actually, you know, look at that. We'll never get there on just a typical business model return on investment. You know, a $15 million substation, you know, it just won't get there. And then there's too many variables to come back to, and that's what that cost of service study really talks about. You can't just do it once to make a decision, no, it's not going to be there, because you've just got to continually look at your rates and make sure that you're collecting enough from your customers and your future customers to pay for that infrastructure upgrade. So, you know, we can show you the numbers. Bart did it of what like a real return on investment looks like, but it's just not going to get there. Not in the typical
ROI
fashion of it.
The ROI would theoretically, if we're doing the rate study correctly, and we're doing the whether it's the impact fees or kayak or anything, like theoretically the ROI would be at the end of whether it's the impact fee timeline or kayak timeline or something like that, right?
it's
Like the
typically-
ROI would be modeled into the rate
Right.
study.
It's typically the debt service.
Whichever's the longest, right?
Debt service gets built in on a one-for-one basis into that cost of service study. So you're making sure that your rates are covering the debt service plus 25% above that, because that's our bond covenant obligation. And that's why you typically in the electric utility industry find that you're borrowing, and so he who uses it pays for it over that 30 years, because then you're covered by your rates having that in there. The other thing you gotta remember when you're dealing with this stuff, so in the last year we've sent, I can't remember if it's 6 or 9 employees to the Okanite factory to look at the main wire that we have produced. And one of my employees went on the last trip and he asked the guy, he's like, why are you guys so backed up? He's like, well, we got room over there. We could put in a whole other run on their bottleneck area. He said, why don't you? He said, why would we? It's busy right now, but in 3 years it may not be busy. So we've got these sunk costs of adding to our factory. We're just as well off now to not have that installed and make you guys wait. Well, as the electric utility, you don't have that option.
Right.
I mean, Southfield Sub, how many customers are being served directly to their homes from Southfield Sub? None.
I was gonna say, isn't that part of your calculation?
Yeah.
But see, that's just it though.
I thought it would have been.
To have that N-1, we're putting in redundancy so that if we do have to shift customers off of Jailhouse, we can pick them up in Heber. Or if we gotta shift some off of Heber, we can pick them up off of College. And so that's the other part of the equation. You may be building an extra substation that doesn't have direct customers paying for it, just so that you have your N-1 reliability coverage. And therefore, it takes that out of your calculation. You're unable to, do you know how hard it is to figure out how much of Kevin's bill goes to paying for the midway substation?
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, I didn't think that would be your calculation. I thought you'd look at total number of customers served from each of the locations.
Well, you do, but we have 7 substations, but only 4 that are really feeding customers. I mean, you could say Provo River's picking up the sewer plant, and maybe a smaller, but really our main ones, Chloe's, Jailhouse, Heber, College, it sits up there, but it isn't really carrying a lot of customers,
It is now.
Yeah.
Now, but the whole time I've been here, it's isolated, and so that's where you kind of, it gets
So
to be
substations
kind
become
of
more of
tricky.
like an expense almost mentality than an investment mentality.
Yeah.
It's more like, for your Lego office, it's more like how many reams of paper you'll need 2 years from now. You're gonna need the reams of paper anyway. Then you just buy them when you need them, you use them when you need them, but you're not investing in reams of paper.
Right, and like Bart said, we just don't have the luxury of, not serving.
Yeah.
Or backing up that supply. It's instantaneous and it's load now. And like I say, it varies. Like Bart says, there's 0 load on South Sub right now on the distribution side, but we've got an excavator diligently working, and it's pretty soon gonna be serving a whole lot of loads once we get those feeders out. That's just phase 2 of that project. But first you got to build the sub, and then you got to get the infrastructure out to where your loads are from that sub. So
Is the trigger for a new, this is beyond this question, but I'm really curious now, is the trigger for a new substation when an individual substation's load is above a 60, or when the combined load distribution among the system is at 60, taking into account the ability to shift between subs?
There are many parameters, right? One of them are the conductors, right? So
Yeah, we don't want to melt something between the two. We don't want to melt something between the two.
that's correct.
That'd be pretty exciting.
For you, not for me. Yeah, so I think those are the factors. Like if we have the getaways and So we check, make sure that the conductors are not getting over 60% first. And then we check that the transformers at the substation, they are not getting over 60%. And if one of those feeders or that conductor is getting overloaded, then we try to do switching to a neighboring substation. But if the one neighbor is already at 60%, then you cannot do that.
Yeah.
And you don't always have the right ties between the right circuits. So it becomes a decision of what's getting overloaded, and it will be a combination of those, the circuits or the transformer at the substation. Also, the new substation we're designing, we are designing for big transformers, right? 22.5 MVA or even up to 30, 33 MVA. That's kind of like what we're designing now, 2 transformers. But our existing substations don't have that privilege. Some of them are, have 1 transformer. Some of them have very small transformers. So that's where it becomes a game of, like, if the big one goes out, then maybe the little one cannot back it up, and that's why we need probably a bigger one next to it. So that's kind of the main.
Okay.
Yeah, just go right through.
Oh, yeah.
I still like to see Bart's analysis because, to me, it's hard to quantify that in one capacity, right? That's hard, understand that. But it seems that would be part of the return on investment. I don't know, did you quantify it with your analysis?
I can say that. This substation that we would put out here on the north is 50 plus years before we get our return on that one.
For the Jordan and Lodge, North Highway 40?
It's more a calculation of the overall age of the system at that point than it is.
But like
Isn't
the
that
office
the life
building,
of the
14
system?
years.
Isn't that the life of the system too, that it would last that long?
Well, when you start getting above 30 on a transformer, you then move into that realm of borrowed time. So.
Okay, but there's other
a
components
lot
of
of
the
other
substation
components,
that would remain, and it would not likely be ever moved once it's there, and all the
Correct.
transmission and distribution lines are out of it, right?
Well, we run a risk with jailhouse because it's on leased land. We run a risk with college because it's on leased land.
Mhm.
The county could decide to not renew that lease, and then we gotta move that. But
I don't know what the lease agreement says about
generally,
renewals.
they don't.
Yeah.
Generally, they stay. Once it's there, it's there. But I'll route that around to the board.
What did you say was
Just wanna look
before?
at it.
You said
The
more.
building, the office building.
Oh, okay.
Also, the fact that we don't load our transformers to 100% or 105% means that we're not pushing the equipment
They
as
last
hard,
longer.
so they last longer. Like
Yeah.
the oil doesn't get as hot, the core, the paper inside, so that helps to have a longer, lifespan on the.
Well, I think, we can, Bart and I in the next audit committee meeting can go over in detail. But I've had these conversations with some customers, especially with the transmission line stuff, the controversy surrounding Southfield sub and that point of delivery. You can't treat it like that though, because we have the obligation to serve and we have the customers, and you can't, just because, the return on investment analysis is 50 years, so why are you building it? That shouldn't be the question that we're asking ourselves, is do we need it to serve the loads that we're obligated to serve? Now, whether that's a fully loaded substation or one that's at 25% capacity and then the loads don't show for another 20 years because there's some downturn in the housing market, you still got to make that decision based on your forecast models and your load forecasts that, we've got to build this because it takes us 10 years to get one of these built. And, there is risk associated with it, but with that risk, you've got another thing that is, you've got a utility that's a monopoly But with that monopoly comes an obligation to serve. Now, if we were telecom, we could make that choice to, no, we don't want to serve that side of the community. You know, let Strata do it. We just do not have that option, so.
But that downturn is also, I did not put any impact fees in mine. Because,
That should help.
well, it would help, it would definitely help, but I don't have it in there because, I'd say if it takes us 10 years to get it submitted and built, and then in 10 years, I mean, we'll be swallowing every bit of impact fee for the next 10 years for the Southville substation. So,
I don't know if we can go back that far.
In the kind of N+1 thought process, do we take into account the time to fix when, you know, the death of a substation, like the rebuild time? I don't know what the, you know, swapping out the transformers in the future, like, do we have that in that calculation too? Or would that?
In the calculation, no, but in our operations, yes.
Okay.
Because, you know, we've had to take substations down
That's for the 60%.
you know, a period of time to get some long-term repairs done. And when we do that, we've got to switch all the loads to multiple substations and then take that particular one that needs that out of service. And, you know, sometimes that can take a few years that a substation's out of service.
if you ever see in the warrants, oil sample shipping, that's what it is. That's how we test the health and safety of our equipment.
Is that blood work for you?
Yeah.
That blood work is like the well sample, whatever.
But maybe your question, I think, or point that you brought up in terms of in the future for additional substations, you know, as the valley kind of gets built out, that's going to make land less and less available, or more expensive.
We're very aware of that. The land's not getting cheaper, so.
And it's not going to get cheaper.
No, and so, you know, we've had the discussion, especially Bart and I, that we've got to put the pressures on the Patricios, on the Burns and McDonald's to get that transmission plan out in front of the public. You know, what is the overall plan 50 years from now? Where are the transmission corridors going to be? Where should we be buying land right now? Because if it doesn't come to fruition, you can always sell the land.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and it'll be
but you can't buy what you can't.
You can't buy what you can't. You know, then we're into really ugly things like UDOT gets into, where you're condemning and, you know, literally carving out a substation plot with 3 or 4 homes somewhere.
But from a cost standpoint, yeah, in the long run, that's, you know, land is always, it's going to accelerate faster than just normal cost of construction or inflation or whatever. It's going to.
For sure, in this valley, for sure, yeah.
I'm just wondering if you've ever been able to do this same kind of analysis with existing facilities to where you can verify your models. You know, where you're going to the, let me try to explain that better. So you've just done this analysis for new ones, okay? But have you ever done this analysis with your existing subs to say, hey, that 60% mark is what we need, and this is where, you know, we have been able to get that return on investment for 40 years, 50 years, 30 years with the Chloe's of Jailhouse. Have you ever tried to look backwards?
That's where we kind of got, that's where the
rates
got behind the 8 ball is in just that regard. And, you know, Aaron cheated on one portion of it. But, you know, for years while I was here, we were, you know, looking at these things like, we don't need to build the next sub until we're, you know, at 80-90% capacity. And so then we're really scrambling really hard.
Yes, I see that.
To get that next sub built before we're out of capacity. And, you know, the transmission line and that point of delivery is perfect case in point. You know, that should have been done in 2005, you know. Instead it gets done in, you know, and energized in 2022. So, yeah, you know, these projects take a long time, and, you know, it's just an ownership on leadership as a whole. Not to kick the can down the road, because, you know.
Okay,
Yes.
I didn't expect a big, long answer. I
Right.
just wanted to hear a yes or a no. It doesn't sound like you have, other than you've used that 60% mark, you know, for what you're
Now we're
deciding.
now we're to 60%, because we've done that analysis and realized, you know, that hindsight analysis, and just realized, you know, we've got to move that mark. We've got to move that
I
mark.
don't think that's a problem here with this board, right?
Oh,
We've
no.
encouraged you
No.
to do the Daniel purchase, we've encouraged you to do this up north purchase. Now we're waiting on Sitla and Christensen and Independence, so to speak, and what the county will work out there.
Not to throw rocks, but that's not a criticism to any boards. You know, that's a criticism to, you know, a GM that chose not to do something and didn't, you know, get his staff to do the legwork and that type of stuff to say, you know, this needs to happen, and bring it to the boards. I think, you know, I'm not saying that's on the boards, that's on me, you know.
No, it's just the what ifs. If we could
yeah,
have just done this when land was so cheap, right?
Yeah.
And we
Cliff
didn't,
said to
darn
me
it.
earlier, it's like, I don't know how you guys push that through, the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
But
quite a
that's
debate.
something that Jason and I
Jeez.
pushed through, because we knew we needed it, you know, whereas prior ones, we knew they needed it, but they didn't want the fight. And trust me, Jason and I talk regularly about going up 12 South. We don't want the fight. There's not
No,
gonna
no,
be
we're
much
trying to
choice.
avoid those. We're trying to avoid that as best as we can. But, you know, if you need those kinds of easements, then you've got to work with whatever entity those corridors are in. So even as soon as possible, and Adam's not here anymore, is he? But
Well, like I
as soon
say,
as possible to say, hey, future development will
Yeah.
need this, and we need this transportation corridor. Can you plat that when development comes in,
yeah.
we get the 30 feet or 20 feet or whatever it is you need, and then future developers will know it's there, right?
Yeah, like I say, I think it comes to, you know, really progressive forward planning, and, you know, having a board approve a transmission plan. And believe me, we did that with this transmission project. You know, one of Kendall's predecessors on the county council, he was on the committee that, you know, did transmission planning with us and Rocky Mountain Power, you know, clear back in 02, 03 type time frame. Val Draper was on that, and that's where that plan came in. You know, this is where we're gonna build transmission lines. But even if you do that, you're still gonna get a lot of pushback from the community, because that's not something that's, you know, just in their face all the time, so they don't know that's there. So you show up at the first public meeting and say, we're following this plan, you get a lot of people, especially in a growing utility like us, that push back and say, I had nothing to do with that plan, you know, so, and change the plan. So, you know, it's just one of those things that, you know, it's just part of being in the business, and it's
Ongoing planning.
it's ongoing planning, yeah, so.
Okay, here we are again. Well, all right, if you don't mind sending out your model, I'd just
I
love to
just
look
did
at
the
that.
ones that are on the WB bonding for.
I don't know if anybody else wants to look at that either, but I'm interested to see the rationale behind this, you know, because we borrowed a lot, we've got a lot of interest that we're gonna have to pay off over these years. I'm trying to see what's sustainable in my mind for these bonds. And, you know, now I'm seeing that the substation costs that we're facing right now are for the future, even though we prefer to pay for them in the future, right? But that's what bonding's about, and yet I'm still concerned about the bonding too, and the interest rates and all of that fun stuff that comes together. Does anybody have any other questions on 5? Let's go to number 6, please, the discussion and possible approval on manufacturer selection for the procurement of gas plant GSU transformer.
Perfect, so.
Okay, so
You need me to stop
Patricio's
sharing?
doing that?
You're okay, I got it. You're good,
Oh, you
Patricia.
got it up?
No, Patricia's gonna pull it. I just had to dual share.
Oh, okay.
You okay?
A lot of small print here.
Yeah, that's a fun little spreadsheet to look at, ain't it?
That's something.
Oh, we built them too.
Perfect. So our gas plant is in need of a GSU, and basically it is a transformer that step up the voltage. So it goes from our generation level voltage, which is 4,160 volts, and step it up to 46,000 volts, which is our sub-transmission system, right, to be able to push it out there towards our customers. And we went through the process of the procurement process of getting an RFP out, right? And we accepted or received 4 bids from 4 different companies or manufacturers. And here is so right here, we have the technical analysis, and it's a very, let's see. So it's an extensive document which basically is like each technical aspect of the transformer.
Including the paint color. And the letter color.
I was
And
gonna
these-
say warranty.
These four companies, pretty much each one of them have a product, right, that meets these technical requirements. And then we went a little bit, by the way, Burns and McDonald's, our engineering consultant firm, was the one that helped us with this analysis.
I see what you're saying.
So here are like the comparisons between them. So in summary, we have a couple of manufacturers that, based on, for example, Delta Star, the very first one, their lead time is 4 years to 4 years and 2 months. That's too long. We cannot afford waiting that long. And then also their cost was way above everybody else, about $2.3 million. So that's a bid that is not favorable to us. Then we have Virginia Transformer, which is interesting. It looks like the lead time, is very short, 11 months to 30 months. And then the cost is significantly lower than the other ones. However, nationally and even as a company, we have a history of like bad quality transformers, so they haven't performed really well. And we also know of one big investor-owned utility that had removed them from like their bidding list. Just many issues that customers have been having with them. So because of that history, we are not considering them as much, even though their cost, their price might be a little bit tempting. That their failures are too many for us to consider them. Then we
Also,
have-
their warranty backs that up.
That's correct. So their warranty is very limited. They only, after a year, they only cover like the core and other parts. They don't cover the other parts of the transformer. So it's just it's not like appealing to us. Then that leaves the other two, for like the final decision, and they're very comparable. However, one of the items that it was for GE ProLeg is that it is a non-domestic product, right? Which it comes with its complications related to potential tariff.
Oh.
So and they stated very clearly in their bid that it is subject to like maybe tariff changes.
Do you know what country it's
In
in?
Mexico.
Mexico. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a risk that I think we're not willing to
Thank
take
you.
on that. And then we finally go with Hitachi ABB. It's a good quality product. Lead time about average 2 years and 3 months.
No tariff issue on that?
That one is national.
Okay.
So we don't have that.
Built in Mississippi.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. So it's in Mississippi, and we've been.
It's really not that much more than the GE.
Yeah.
on the costing either, considering Mexico versus Mississippi.
Pretty well narrows it down.
27, 18, 45,000.
So after like
Catch would be
staff
Almost
review,
like 2
and
Virginias.
we are recommending
Yeah,
to
but you'd about have
award
to replace it when it
like
wears out.
this contract to Hitachi ABB. Seems to be the most favorable.
And you'll buy the extended warranty,
Why,
the 18,000 additional cost, is that for the 60 months, I hope?
Right there. Which line are they?
What,
Extended warranty, it's down, it's right above miscellaneous.
oh,
Yes, we would buy the extended warranty.
Why
For the
was,
60 months?
Yes, we will buy that.
Great.
why would Delta be so much higher cost considering so much further lead time? Is that just a California situation?
They've got a very small plant. They specialize in mobile transformers and not necessarily these ones. And they've got all
Just
the
not a
ones we-
comparative bid.
Yeah. Our last gas plant transformer is actually Delta Star. And they built us a really nice model. But-
It's interesting with these transformers, they, you know, on any given bid sequence, I think it just depends on what their production lines look like and what they're seeing forward. Delta Star usually supplies us a quote, but you can tell if Delta Star doesn't have capacity at their plant, their lead times are very long and they bid it very high.
With the last three we bought were Siemens. They didn't bid it.
Yeah.
So what would be the source of financing?
This would be part of the bond financing.
The 2026 bond,
Yeah.
even with the 2+ year lead time?
Yeah.
So we'd sit on the money for a year?
Well, it could get split. There could be some impact fee payments involved with this, but once we award the contract, there's, you know, a substantial amount for the deposit that would probably come from bond proceeds of the last bond. You know, but, you know, depending on where the impact, Bart, you can correct me, but if the impact fee fund is at the right level, you know, when that next payment is due, it might come from impact fees. And then the final payment may come from that future bonding.
So when you order, 40% of the price is owed at that time.
Right now.
So
Okay.
we would actually probably be having to take from our
So,
2023 bond
Yes.
proceeds to pay that 40% down.
If
And
it's
then we
helpful.
use the 2026 bond to reimburse the company for that
Yeah.
2023 stuff.
Because we have to pay that off still.
Yeah. If it's helpful, board, the GE is $68,000 less. If the tariff was 0.6%,
Oh,
it's now above Hitachi, so there isn't a decision
Thank you.
here.
so,
thank you.
Because
Because it's gonna be more than
so we're
0.6.
looking at one, right?
Yep.
We're looking at just one.
Yep.
And the lead time is about 2 years?
That's weird. And we've
Okay.
got a lot of work to do to get ready for this anyway.
Okay.
You know, probably, you know, about 1.5 to 1.75 years worth of work to even get a pad ready to take delivery of this. So lead times.
So
don't
lead
bother
time's
us too
about
much.
right where,
There's
Well-
currently a power plant sitting where this thing needs to sit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, where does it go then?
Yeah.
So
I think we
plant
know.
one will get tore down and reconfigured to be a substation for those plants.
yeah,
Okay,
So,
okay.
okay, and then, darn,
which I met with the county
So
today
this
about
question.
moving the fiber out of it.
You know,
They're really looking at how to get it done.
yeah.
I know. They've been banging on my door hard.
so if we can approve this.
what we've been
then,
doing,
We can get it ordered.
So do we
Yeah,
just need a
but we
motion
can
to
also
approve?
get it onto our impact fee study with Bochamps this fall.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, this is included in impact fee study, yeah.
thank you.
Oh, it's including already.
This brings
No,
the
no, not
capacity
yet.
of the
It will be.
substation up, so it will be impact fee eligible for
Yeah.
that change.
Okay, so there's a possible approval on a motion here if anyone's interested.
How would you word the motion? I've never been on that type of. To
I'd-
award the bid to Hitachi ABB?
Yeah.
yeah. I'll second that motion.
Oh,
Oh, no.
just
Okay.
that simple?
Oh, you
See
were
how
making
simple
it?
that was?
You were just working on the wording?
I'm gonna, move that we approve the purchase from this bid summary based on Hitachi ABB and the estimated cost.
I'll second the motion.
And then, of course, that includes the 60-month warranty for the additional 18 plus
Right,
thousand.
that's
All right,
the
I just
whole
want to make sure that's in there. Is everybody
It's
ready
not
to
the
vote?
full
Any
warranty.
further discussion?
Just one item,
Okay,
because of noticing, I don't know if we're within the right window of time.
so
Should we not?
Riley
It may
sent
have
that
to be
out.
ratified at the next board meeting.
Got it.
Riley, did you send it out 24 hours before? I thought you were close on that.
We were really close, but we didn't get it back from Burns and McDonald until about 5:54.
Okay,
So
but
worst,
it's
worst
still.
case, we just have to.
Just
Oh,
ratify it.
So we can go ahead and then ratify it?
Yeah, we'll bring it back next month.
You can start doing the
but
paperwork
Do you want
on
to
it.
just say
Yeah.
to proceed?
Sure. To proceed, yeah, I'll
Just
modify my motion to proceed with Hitachi ABB when we can.
Second stands.
Okay, is everybody good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kevin, you start the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Sid, your turn.
Yes, and the lead time, a year, that's really good
2 years.
nowadays.
No, 2 years.
2 years on that
2
one.
years.
But still, that's really good.
Yeah.
These lead times on this stuff is crazy long, so.
Well, 3, 4, what did we wait?
Mississippi.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. That
Same
passes
thing
6-0.
States,
So
Same
we'll
thing on
turn it
fire
back to you,
engines
Jason, on the GM report, please, and then we'll do a tour.
Okay.
I won't be going.
So GM report.
I'm gonna have to miss it too, dang it. Deacon trying out
UAMPS,
for
Thank
not
you.
learn how to time out.
Okay.
But I'd say for the,
the UAMPS board did meet in June. The project, the major project for us that met and took action was the Hunter project, and the Hunter Project Management Committee sent to the UAMPS Board of Directors the motion to put the Hunter project in as a generator to bid into the EDAM market
Oh, good.
as a group. So the entire capacity of that plant will get bid into the EDAM market when EDAM goes live in May of 2026.
But that won't affect what the PPAs that we have with it.
With the Hunter project and the power sales agreement, I mean, where it will affect us is if Hunter, the way the energy market will work, is it'll get bid in every day at the variable cost of Hunter. But Hunter will also act as, so our percentage share of the 65 megawatts of which UAMPS is a taker in the Hunter plant, that 65 megawatts will get bid in every day as a block, as a 65 megawatt block. If it gets bid in, then that means it's in the money, and that plant, our percentage of that plant will make whatever gain in the market that it is. If it's not bid into the market, then we won't have any variable costs, and it'll get replaced variable cost wise by the market. But we'll still have the fixed costs associated with it. But the other thing that we will have, if it's not bid in, is we went into the day with resource adequacy, because we had enough capacity with Hunter. That Hunter piece will be included in that capacity portion of the market. So
Is that a yes or no? I'm
it's,
sorry, I don't
so
know.
our per portion of it is going to get bid into the market as part of that 65 megawatt block.
And then we're just paid, but we're not able to use it?
Oh, we will use it for our loads if it's taken for the market. If it's not taken by the market, then the market will replace it at a lower cost.
Is that right?
Okay.
Well, that's gonna be so
But it is a block. We're currently just scheduling our own Hunter. Our portion of Hunter, we schedule it, day ahead. as part of our overall schedule. Both the Nebo plant in UAMPS and the Hunter plant, which are the two dispatchable plants UAMPS has, are both going to be bid into the market as blocks of power, not independently scheduled.
That's gonna be interesting.
Oh yeah,
So
it's
that
going to
means-
be, but that's the big thing out of the UAMPS group. IPA update. Commissioning continues on the two gas units. We're currently the operating agent is currently running the two coal units. We're running one unit through the end of June, and then in July they'll be running two units until commissioning ends and the gas units get turned over, or they'll run two units through September. It just depends on when, the gas units get through with their commissioning and testing as to when they'll start backing off of that coal. But the end of coal is near at the IPP plant. As soon as the two gas units have been fully commissioned and are grid worthy, then the coal units will back off, and all the energy that we get out of the IPP plant will be natural gas. So I would anticipate that sometime in the late August, September timeframe. So with the latest information that I've got.
The state legislature's not sniffing around there to try to.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, so IPA, the kind of the legislative arm and the owner of the IPP plant, signed an MOU with Energy Solutions in the state of Utah to begin to explore nuclear at the site. And there is also ongoing work with IPA and some other coal operators to keep the coal units going as a bridge until they can get nuclear developed, is kind of where that direction is going. But the legislature is still very much involved in keeping those two coal units.
So the coal and the natural gas would run, if they do that, would run.
With a lot of problems. They've got to sort out a lot of problems, because coal units, once they convert to gas, then gas has got all the transmission and all the substation
Yeah, where are you gonna put the power from the
infrastructure.
coal units?
So there's still a lot of, just a lot of things to work out to keep those coal units operational. Water is another big one. If somebody else comes in and takes those coal units, they don't have the water to operate it, so they'd have to get the water to operate those coal units somewhere else, because the water's going to operate the gas.
The gas, yeah, not enough shares.
Huh. As complicated as it could be.
Yes, it's very complicated. APPA National Conference. So Aaron, Emily, and I attended the APPA National Conference. I'll let Aaron give his update. The three things that I really got out of the conference was I went to a really good discussion on third-party risk. I believe that's something that I'm going to work with staff here on to start to build some third-party risk language into our RFP documents. And I got some really good insights on how companies are going about building that third-party risk component into some of their documents, like this bid document you just went through on transformers. What that third-party risk would be about is, we don't know what kind of contracts Hitachi ABB has that they're banking on to come through in order to build that thing. And there's been a lot of fallout in many sectors, not just the electric utility sector, in a third party not following through on their contractual obligation, which creates that domino effect. So that's just something that I think we need to take a look at in some of our documentation, is to try to mitigate that third party risk as much as possible. I also went to a really good session on wildfire mitigation plans, and that's something that I talked to the mayor about. You know, that's something that's going to be coming in front of this body before the end of the year, and that's a wildfire mitigation plan for this organization to have in place. And to just make sure from a policy perspective that we're following that.
Will that tie into our pre-disaster thing that we met?
Wildfire mitigation
Tie
plan.
right into there. Perfect. Tie in.
The other one that I found very interesting was a session from Bloom Energy with their fuel cell technology. It's just a technology that historically has really been out of the money on, you know, like you've seen on that Lazard study, they didn't even have fuel cells up there because fuel cells really haven't been a player. I believe fuel cells are going to start to become a player. They're coming down in cost, where the rest of those technologies that we went over in that Lazard study are going up in cost. So eventually they're going to kind of meet.
So you say fuel cell, but that's not battery storage.
No.
What kind of fuel?
So they burn natural gas at a really, really efficient level, and very, very low emissions. And, you know, historically, you know, there used to be this, you know, science project off to the side. There's been a few companies that used them. I think Colby worked for one. eBay had a fuel cell plant down there for a while that met their kind of strategic plan, or you know, kind of fit inside of their renewable type of policy. But they were just always so far out of the money. But like I say, that technology continues to come down in cost, and you know, these other ones keep going up in cost. So eventually they're going to meet. When, I don't know exactly, but it's just something I think we ought to keep our eye on. And, you know, I went to, you know, several other sessions, but those were the three that really stood out for me. So, and Aaron, I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I'll do a quick recap. So super cool meeting, potentially boring for a lot of people, but I liked it a lot. Had a really interesting time learning a lot of stuff. So the ones I went to that I thought were the most important, employee retention discussions, and some good information about what other utilities are having to do to retain employees and to hire away from larger power companies. Another one on hiring and talent acquisition, specifically with the mentality of replacing some senior leaders here in the future, right? Understanding what that might look like, and you know, what kind of bonuses were necessary, what kind of benefits were necessary, and things like that. So some really good anecdotal stuff, a lot of pictures. I got a lot of slides, things to share, but you know, it's more a conversation when the conversation comes up, if that makes sense. And then I went to two community interactions ones. So one, working better with municipalities, super helpful for me, obviously. And then one talking about how to talk to the public and how to help people understand what power entities do, and why they do, and how they do, and how to be involved, and how to have a voice, and how to be informed, and stuff like that. The general sessions were super helpful, I thought. They were a couple of you know, both of them, I think, or both of the good ones were kind of around government interactions and lobbying and talking through government changes and what that can mean. So it was useful to kind of change the way I was thinking about a lot of things. So super duper helpful, I thought, overall.
I just have, I'm sorry to steer this maybe potentially a little off topic, but in that regards, I don't know if anything was discussed about what potential AI would have for utilities and whatnot,
And
because
we went to 2 AI things.
and I only share that a good friend of mine, neighbor, who was instrumental. He's one of the founders of and creators of Fortnite, the game, and he's been sharing a lot about AI and how a lot of things are going to change. So anyway, it's just something I think that, and you've probably already had discussions about it.
Well, and you know, where AI can really be a tool for Heber Light and Power and that type of stuff. You know, I thought Aaron and Emily and I did a great job of breaking out each session and each going to a different, you know, different topic of conversation.
Yeah,
And
we never were in the same session.
No.
We never sat next to each other at all,
No.
which was kind of
No.
insane.
But Emily went to the kind of the AI-driven ones
Okay.
as far as how they would help, you know, this utility and that type of stuff. So she's very, very interested in that as well. So
Okay.
Very. We discussed trying to put a policy out hopefully later this year, early next year around AI. I just don't know exactly what that looks like because it's so evolutional, right?
It's just, it's happening so fast.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
You don't need to go there for a source, but the one that Matt put together for the city to review,
Yeah.
we didn't actually get to, but it's in the agenda items from 2
Yeah.
meetings ago. I wanna say.
Okay.
Wasn't last meeting, was it? It was 2 meetings ago. So
2
when we went to
meetings ago.
11:30.
Right, thank
He
you.
did a pretty good job,
Cool.
or AI did. I'm just kidding. No, he did.
Well, no, that's what it is.
I was just kind of
I was
joking.
doing a training on AI, and I'm like, this is good info to share. Actually,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
build a policy around this.
Yeah, what they talked about with AI, Kevin, high level, because I went to one AI one, I didn't learn anything. It was very high level. It was kind of, I was like, nah, this is the wrong. But what they talked about generally is how are you thinking about utilizing AI instead of hiring? How are you thinking about utilizing AI to augment your workforce and to reduce costs in that way? Is what the message I got, and I was like, well,
The
this
ones
is-
you went to.
This was
So-
not a very interesting.
And I'm
session.
just sharing,
Words were, I think,
again,
better.
this is an individual who's kind of at the forefront of AI, and he's sharing, things are going to change in 10 years
Yeah.
that will equal, you know,
What, the industrial age?
from the industrial age in 10 years.
More, faster than that.
I think
And
faster.
and probably faster than
5
that.
years.
More than
But-
that and faster than that.
It's moving
But-
at such
but-
an exponential rate.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't have answers, I'm not the expert in that at
Is
all,
this the
but
Giddy
it's
guy?
something, yeah.
DeFi, the Giddy guy. Is this? Am I thinking of the right guy?
This is Jeremy Mustard.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Aaron, quickly, your reference was the city's board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, it's
council
again, it's not the only source, but he
Yeah.
did a good job
I
actually.
mean, yeah.
About how do employees think about it? How do we think about it with IT concerns? Executive
sure.
Tech helped him as well,
Cool.
or helped through Anthem, and so it's. I mean, they would help you the same way with the contract, of course.
Okay, that's good, that's good. Now we have this idea of looking ahead and seeing what's coming at us kind of in the last 2 quarters of the year and seeing what we can prepare for. So Jason, if you want to proceed with that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, so upcoming board meetings are July 23rd, and we've typically brought strategic planning to you all in one big chunk in August. What Mayor Christensen and Mayor Franco and Bart and I discussed in audit committee was, kind of bringing some strategic planning in the July agenda on the 23rd, and then again in August of 27 or August 27th, another piece of, so that we're not in one great big long meeting, but kind of break it up between the two. And what we kind of discussed there is maybe starting the board meeting a couple hours early, whether that's at 3 and then doing the board meeting at 5, or
On the 27th, August 27th?
July 23rd and August 27th.
Well, the 24th, some of you might be off, right?
Yeah.
Isn't Heber Light and Power off on the 24th? Right.
Yes, we're off on the
The city
24th,
is-
but the 23rd works for us. So.
But I could do earlier.
Okay.
And then the other one you do earlier is August 27th.
Yeah.
And that works for me too right now.
Meet at the 3 p.m. See, I didn't know if it was.
Well, you were even
Sid,
talking
I don't
like
know if
2.
I don't know if it's convenient for Sid or Aaron. We might have to go to
Certainly
3:30.
not convenient, but I can probably do it with that much notice.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
or we just go later.
Yeah, that's what we kind of talked about, was just starting 2 hours early and then going into the board meeting. If that's like at 2 o'clock and start the board meeting normally at 4, or going and starting the planning meeting at 3 and then starting the board meeting at 5. But getting a couple hours of strategic planning in prior to the board meeting.
Does
And
it
we'll
ever make
try
sense
to-
to do
we'll-
another day?
We'll try to keep those, keep the board meeting agendas as small as possible so that, we're not.
Or even do the
Right.
planning after board meeting.
Yeah, I'd say
If
do
it
the
works
board
better to
meeting
start.
Or we
first.
could do the board meeting
Let's
first.
get through
yeah.
that, and if you don't mind, I'd prefer to do it at 3:30 or 4
Okay, yeah, no.
because of my work schedule also, please.
And then
So
just
you're
do
talking
it,
about starting?
Yeah, starting.
start
at
your regular
3:30
time
or
and just
4.
go longer after.
Okay.
Works too.
Okay.
That would,
Sid, what do you think?
He's gonna say this.
So I work down in Salt Lake, so the later the better. It's hard for me to get up there earlier, so if we can keep it close to 4 and go a little bit later in the evening, that works better for me.
that would also work for me on August 27th. I'm coming from out of town and was planning to make it at 4, so 2 might be.
Okay.
So July
I may miss July.
I'm here July.
and
Well,
August, we'll
okay.
just go
It's-
longer, we'll
it's-
start at 4 and go longer,
Okay.
is that what we'll do?
Yes.
That's fine, that's
Yeah.
fine. It looks like we might need to split it up then in August and September instead of July and August. What does
That's fine.
everybody think? And then,
We're back in
It's-
school in August, so my life is back to normal.
Yeah, if
July
we-
is my last ditch effort to do something.
I'm good with that.
No, I'm okay with July, or August and September
but
also.
are we going to have a quorum for July? Aaron's gone,
I'm here.
you're here, I'm here.
I'll be
I'm here as far as I
Okay, looks
know.
like we've got a quorum for July, so
I'd
we'll
probably call
proceed.
in from Idaho, but I just don't know how useful I'll be.
Yeah,
I understand. I'm sorry, I'm laughing on that.
but
But let's do our
Oh,
strategic
Being
planning.
remote is fun.
No, I'm just saying, I know how it is to
It's
call in.
beneficial, but it's not helpful.
I mean, I called in from the Philippines here. That was interesting, but we did it. Okay, so let's do our strategic plan if everybody's okay in August and September after our regular board meetings, please, just because we'll all have an incentive to, make sure we participate and get through the material. And then we were hoping to have a tentative budget as well as, I guess, the impact fees by October 22nd. What do you think, Jason?
That's what we're gonna shoot for, Jeff.
And then we'll do the public hearing on the November 19th, please, so that we can potentially pass the budget and the impact fees on November 19th. And if we can wrap up our business, then everyone can have the December meeting off.
That sounds like a good plan.
Let's do that. That sounds,
Yes, I'm trying to do it at
Interesting
HBSSD
to
too.
approve the budget in one meeting, that'll be cool.
Well, we
I've
do
never
the
had experience
tentative.
with that.
we do the tentative.
In
I'm giving
October.
a hard time.
Okay, and then we'll just see if we can meet those goals. But is there anything else big coming at us besides the strategic plan and AI policy and anything else big?
Plan for the AI policy for next year, like probably early next year.
AI
Develop
policy
it.
would be next year. We're really gonna
Okay.
try to get a wildfire mitigation plan and a wildfire, policy for the, other stakeholders, in place by the end of the year. And we'll push to make it so that happens, prior to, any of those other big decisions.
There might be some Privacy Act policy changes coming too.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do any bond
We
parameters.
won't have any input. Not as of right now, that's
Okay.
not.
That's fine,
We're
perfectly fine.
Are there any other policies that we have to get in place to qualify for any of the insurance changes? Or are we in a good spot? Like, were those dependent on us doing anything in advance?
I think we gotta take care of it.
I think we're good there, but we'll take a look to see if we gotta get anything in place prior to the next time. That's
Yes.
a moving target, so.
Yes. Well, you would think that this inspection and the documentation of the inspection, like you showed us,
Yeah,
could really help show them that we're doing so much for the wildfire
Yeah.
mitigation, and especially with the new policy. Okay, is there anything else that you need our help with?
I don't know.
What's happening with UAMPS in August? Do we-
Oh.
what do we-
Did everybody get that invite?
Yeah, I've got a couple,
So, yeah, so UAMPS in
August 17th, 18th.
August
17th,
18th,
19th.
I'm not planning to
I'm
go.
out.
I've got work here, sorry.
No, that's okay, but
I just wish
for
they'd
us,
do
we're-
hybrid sessions for at least the general session, that would be nice. That would be
Yeah,
nice.
17th through 19th in Truckee. Truckee's the host city. I think it's gonna be held in Squaw Valley.
Says Olympic Valley, California on the thing,
Oh,
wherever
right.
that is.
That was bad of me. It used to be called that. Not called
Same
that.
thing.
Sorry. I apologize.
That one is me.
But yeah, Jackie sent out the registrations on that. If you didn't get it, just let me know and we can resend it. The actual registration, that's you gotta click on the link and go in and fill out the registration form, so.
So is everybody flying or are you driving?
Whatever you guys wanna do, I will drive if, based on my, injury schedule, if I can go. Since you go.
I'm out of town, so.
How long a drive is it? I don't mind driving.
It's close to 9 hours.
Yeah.
Or a little
Yeah.
more?
You can ride
8
the
plus
train.
hours.
You
Yeah.
can ride the train
8+ hours,
to Sacramento
Yeah.
or to
Undri-
Reno.
yeah.
Tell you that.
And then,
Oh, sorry,
And
Sid,
then
go
drive it.
ahead.
24 days.
It's not a fun drive to go.
It's like 8 hours of drive.
It is very boring.
Well, if you go, you
Train's
probably
awesome.
wanna split it up anyway. That's what we want. If we go, that's what we'll do, is split it up and stay somewhere and then go on.
Me and my
Is-
daughter's
Winnemucca?
supposed to a couple years ago.
Oh,
Kendall and I flew last night.
We flew in, yeah, and then we rented a car.
you flew into Reno and then rented a car?
Yeah,
Is that what you probably do?
and that's the most.
I wasn't
efficient
joking
way.
about the train.
So
It's
if you'd
really
like to
fun.
go,
It's actually possible.
I would just plan on that,
It's
just
great.
let
You-
Ryan
you can
know
ride the
how you
train.
like to do that.
It's really fun.
Get it booked for
That
you.
would be fun.
Yeah, my mission was in Sacramento.
actually pretty cool.
A couple of times.
You have been
Nice.
quiet. Are you going?
Should we do it like this?
I'm out of town.
Are you in Reno?
We do, no.
We
do- we
appreciate
do-
No,
your
I've
reports.
been to Reno too many times
We do
coaching
our road
volleyball, and
restriction.
some of my players rode the train.
First
Yeah.
day of school is August 18th.
They liked it.
25 days in the wilderness.
Okay,
After this year.
just real quickly, one other update. We did have a near miss, a pretty serious near miss, on, our system. The employee, was, just super professional, had all of his, protective equipment on, did the job correctly, came out unharmed, and, but we had over at the Millstream kind of complex there in Midway, a panel explode. It was kind of sizzling when he went up to it, and the fire department was there because there was some smoke coming out of it. And when he went up to, throw that main breaker on that panel to de-energize it, it exploded on him. But like I say, you know, he did everything right, had everything on that he needed to have on to survive something like that, and,
Is he okay?
he's good, he's fine. He walked away unharmed,
Oh,
and, you know, we've gotta buy him some new clothes, but that's why we buy those type of clothes.
yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to let the board know about that.
What was the equipment failure?
You know, the meter panel on the back of or on a building, there's a bank of, I think, 4 that fed 4 different, tenants in that building.
Okay.
And, yeah, you got a picture of it. You got a
Was it
picture
just,
of it.
was it just age? Was it vermin? Was
In
it-
our analysis of it, and I might get this wrong, I had surgery on Thursday and this happened on Friday.
So you
So-
were still kinda out of it?
Yeah, I had a nerve block in. I was on the phone for a few hours on this one, but I did get
Oh.
kind of an update on this, so this is the part that exploded on him. Jake Parcell, our substation manager, he went and did an analysis on this. It looked like there were some wires on the back end of this panel that hadn't been wire tied and secured properly. And, you know, over the years had rattled and worn thin. There'd been a lot of arcing going on in there to a point where it started to smoke. And when our employee went up and threw that to disconnect that, the switch that would disconnect that, that's when the explosion happened, and that's where he was in harm's way. We categorize that as a near miss, just because had he not been doing everything right, it could have ended tragically.
That's where good training comes in.
Yeah.
Yes, thank goodness. Thank
Well, and good
goodness.
employees, you know,
Yeah.
I mean.
That are doing what they're supposed to do.
Takes good training, but it also takes an employee that treats every job professionally.
Conscientious, yeah.
And we're very glad he's safe.
Maine.
So just wanted you guys to know about that before you heard about it on
The south-
Facebook or something.
Is that the south or north side?
That panel's what, 30 years old?
380 East Main, is that what you said?
I was trying to think about how old those
Yeah.
mainstream buildings are, but I bet we're getting close to that range.
Yeah.
I'm guessing 2000 type time frame.
Something. Okay, okay.
So yeah, you know, you can clearly see the damage to our equipment there. You know, we'll just have to eat the losses on those meters and go, when they get a new panel put on, the landlord, then we'll go re-energize that facility. But right now, that facility is out of power.
Oh,
There's not a insurance coverage that we can go after from the landlord or from the building?
No. Not with our current policy.
Oh, I mean from the building, like the building owner doesn't have any kind of
I
fire
don't think
policy
we'll
that
be able to
allows-
go after the building owner on that. I just, you
It's
know,
about $1,000 loss there.
yeah.
Okay.
thank goodness it wasn't more.
Nothing wrong there.
Well,
If it's okay, I'll ask anybody if they want to adjourn.
I do.
Thank you, Kendall.
I'll second.
Thank you, Brenda.
Just quick question
Oh,
on
my God.
procedure.
Okay.
We're the board, are we gonna have a quorum go tour the building? If we are, can we adjourn, or should we adjourn there?
Well,
Or do we even
how
wanna
is
go
going?
do the
I'd
tour?
I'd love to, but
I do-
I'll have to catch you another time.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
So we'll end up with 3?
Yeah,
So
it
you don't
looks
even
like
have a
we won't
quorum?
have a quorum,
Okay.
so we'll adjourn.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that's, Sid, do you want to adjourn?
Yes,
Okay, that's 6-0. Okay, thank
I have
you,
another
Sid.
hour drive up, so yeah.
Thank you,
It'll be great.
Sid. Be